Okay, I'm going to call the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, August 23rd to order, and the first item is approval of the agenda.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I have item 8C to add. DPW Operations Director Bill Kernan has requested the board approval to draft a new town water ordinance. And adding item 10A, request from the Energy Committee to allow Vermont Solar Fund LLC to file a certificate of public good applications for potential solar projects. Is there any other requested change? Okay. This mic will not project to you because we're broadcasting on TV. Yeah, maybe it'd be. Is there any other requested amendments to the agenda? Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda with the two additions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, next is approval of the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there anything anybody would like to call attention to on the consent agenda? I will note that the regional, or was it? There was something about the regional CCRPC with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission is, yeah. It's going to be a tough meeting tonight. I got a room full, and I'm just back from a long drive, so I just spaced what I was. Yeah, I don't remember what my point was on that one. So, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So I recognize there's a whole room full here. Is there anybody that's here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay. Next, we're going to move to.
We have a hand up by Judy Weiger-Groves. Okay.
Okay.
It's a little early.
Judy? Judy, you can go ahead and state your issue. Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Glendale. And one of the issues was that it was an eyesore for people coming into the town. It was cleaned up by the end of 2019 when it was purchased by the bishop. And it has, for the last 3 years, remained in the same state. I'm just wondering what is going on there.
No new news on that.
Jennifer Murray, Director of Planning and Zoning, reports that there's no new news on that.
I'm sorry. I've got the earbuds on that you guys gave me, but I can't hear you. So what's the deal?
Well, I don't really have much more to elaborate on, Judy, but there isn't really an update. We can check with the property owner and get back to you, but we don't have any news for you.
Okay, because I know it was a problem back in 2017, and it seems like, yeah. So Kathleen, I have one more question. I have comments for later on in the meeting. Do I have to sign in again, or can I be a panelist, or what do I have to do?
I will lower your hand and give you permission to talk when it comes up again. So just,
Okay,
okay, just raise your hand.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, Cheryl Mitchell? There you are.
Well, Cheryl Mitchell is not here,
You're
but I am,
sitting in for Cheryl Mitchell?
yes.
Okay, please come to the table. So, just a note to the board members, after our July 18th special meeting, we had the public hearing regarding the proposed community development block grant application for the child care facility expansion program, and we found out that our notification didn't fulfill the requirements. And so this public hearing is an opportunity for the select board to take public testimony on the proposed $1 million grant application by the Otter Creek Child Care Center. So in accordance with Vermont Community Development Act 10 VSA Section 684, the board is conducting a public hearing to take questions and comments from the Middlebury community regarding a proposed application by the Community Child Care Expansion Project to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant to fund the renovation, expansion, and outfitting of the Otter Creek Child Care Center. I'm going to turn the floor over to
Linda January.
in January, and after her brief presentation, if there's any questions or comments, please raise your hands. And with that, I'm going to open it up to you for any comments that you have.
Thank you for having us tonight, and sorry about the mix-up for the last hearing. I'm Linda January, the Executive Director of Otter Creek Child Center here in Middlebury. And as you stated, we are here to ask for support in our efforts in applying for our Economic Development Grant under the Vermont Community Development Program. We will be requesting between $800,000 and $920,000. We're still working on the formula of what the grant application will allow us to request. The project consists of an expansion to the current Otter Creek Child Center facility at 150 Weybridge Street and a renovation of the current building. The project will take 2 years to complete once construction begins. Phase 1 is the new construction, adding an addition to the east side of the building, and phase 2 is renovating the farmhouse. The project, when complete, will add up to 77 new childcare slots. 20 of those slots will be for children under the age of 2, and it will add at least 28 new jobs. 17 of those jobs will be full-time teachers, 8 will be part-time teachers, a minimum of 2 full-time administration positions, 1 part-time kitchen position, and then 3 of our current part-time positions will increase to full-time, and a possibility of more positions as we figure out all the administration structure of the new facility. This is in partnership with Middlebury College, Otter Creek Child Center, College Street Children's Center. We have also been working closely with Let's Grow Kids, Champlain Valley Head Start, as well as other local early childhood education community members. And we do have some slides.
You want me to start right at the top?
Sure.
There we go, so let's.
So this is a slide of the site location. So the current site of Otter Creek and then the lot to the north of Otter Creek will be combined into one lot, which will be just over 5 acres, and that will help us build an access road and a extended parking lot, so parking is no longer on the street, and families will have direct access from the parking lot to the building. This is just what the current site looks like This is a view of traveling down Wade Bridge into downtown, with the expansion in the back really sitting in the current footprint of the barn. Another view just from Weybridge Street. And this would be the new entrance of the facility, which would be around the east side of the building. The front fenced-in area will be new infant and toddler play spaces, outdoor play spaces, where those classrooms will have direct access to outside. Most classrooms will have direct access to outside, except for the oldest children, with lots of new play space and lots of covered porches to keep with the current design of the building and aesthetics of the neighborhood, and lots of porch swings, which are kind of an iconic piece of Otter Creek. And this is our hopeful timeline. It's probably pushed back a little bit at this point, but hopeful that the early part of 2023, we will be ready for permitting and to put the project out to bid, with construction possibly starting, that second quarter of 2023. And it is a 2-year process.
Is that it?
That is the last slide, yes.
So with that, why don't I open it up? Is there any questions? I know the board has had this presentation. Is there anybody dialed in for this particular topic? So,
We have a hand by,
My name is Joy Chris. I'm here because I saw the.
if you
It
could
would
come
really
right
help
up.
if you use a microphone for folks at home.
That's okay. I can do that. I can sit down. My name is Joya Kuss. I was told of the project. I am totally in support of more childcare in our area. Obviously, it's something that's very needed. However, I was sort of alarmed. I have to say that I was the director for the land trust during the time when there was a conservation easement put on the property, and none of the maps that I saw actually even referenced that. And one of the most important things about that project was making sure that the public had access along the Otter Creek corridor and that it was going to be available for wildlife. The drawing, as it is depicted, done by somebody from Massachusetts, I don't know whether he was ever actually on site. The people who are familiar with the property, it is an enormous gully that goes down, and so the roadway is proposed to go down the gully and go over the gully to the bottom of the Otter Creek Child Center, as I understand it. This is a drainage that acts as for wildlife. I believe there may be a bat or there may be other things, and I just really am concerned that yeah, was that somebody doing a bat?
Owl coming alive.
So I just am concerned that that wasn't talked about, and I know that the college owns the other child care center on College Street. I actually lived in that building, or in the back of that building when I was in college. It is a flatter area. It is certainly an area that has, not as much construction. There's going to need to be an enormous amount of moving of dirt in order to make that flat. And that is, an environmental concern for me. I am not a resident of Middlebury. You should know that as well. I am a resident of Weybridge, on the Conservation Commission there, and was involved in all of the sort of work that's been done up and down the corridor.
Yeah, so all of those things are things that we talk about all the time. So the easement on the property is the 200 feet back from the riverbank, and that has been kept in mind throughout the whole project, and will remain. That easement will remain, and as the property is expanded, that easement will be expanded to the full 5 acres, so through the full lot. And we are working, our architect who has been on site multiple times, and they are based out of Massachusetts but are familiar with Middlebury, has been on site and is working really closely with local firms around all of the drainage and civil engineering. And then we are working closely, or we'll work closely with Malt to hopefully extend the current path that is back there, that will go all the way up to Weybridge Street is our plan. And we're in the beginning of phases of the Nepa environmental review process. So there will be a Brownsfield assessment, there will be an assessment of endangered species, of wildlife, of floodplains, of a historical preservation assessment, an archaeologist assessment. So all of those environmental concerns, we have to do a very extensive review, which we're in the beginning stages of. And if any of those concerns come up, there will be mitigation plans. So all of those things we're thinking about and talking about all the time.
Great. Is it actually proposed that it is level ground back? Is the gully going to be filled in completely that goes back to the house?
We're still working on all of those details and the exact placement of the drive. We'll do kind of trying to move as little earth as possible. And so we're still determining where's the best placement for the drive so that could happen.
And as minimize not only the erosion potential, but also keeping as much of the trees that are there, because that is such a lovely entrance to Weybridge Street.
Yes, it is, and we will, if tree removal, if there are tree removal, we will be, the goal is to replace trees and keep it a nice green a lot, and with lots of trees and landscaping.
So as I understand, you will be continuing the easement for the 200 feet on the contiguous piece of property northward, and
Yes, that's the plan.
also allowing public access down there.
Yes.
That is huge. And, excuse me, I know that the map wasn't probably even to the 200 feet boundary, but when I read everything and I realized it had not been addressed with what I had read, I just really want the public to be aware that the whole donation of the property was contingent upon that easement and the protection of wildlife and public access. So
Yep, absolutely, and that's been a big part of our design process is keeping that in mind.
okay, all right, great.
Thanks, Joy.
Thanks so much.
We have Chris Robbins on the line on Zoom. Chris?
Hi, Chris.
Hi. Yeah, I live in Middlebury and I walk past those woods every day pretty much. And it just looks to me on the plans that there's some, it's a little bit more expansive than necessary over where the drive is. That's what it looks like to me. And right now in the back, the kids have some access to the woods. They have maybe a tree house back there. Is that going to continue? Are they still going to be able to play in the woods?
Yes, absolutely. That's a big part of our program. And we hope to continue that. All of our playgrounds will continue to be certified Nature Explorer outdoor classrooms. And we would continue to explore the surrounding woods around us as well as other natural parts of Middlebury.
Chris, are you set?
Well, yeah, I guess I was making kind of similar point to Joya that, maybe the flat area is larger than necessary and, make sure the parking lot doesn't have extra space in it, that kind of thing.
yeah, we're very mindful of that, and we are trying to minimize as much as we can with staying in mandatory regulations for how many spots we need compared to our capacity. We're not going to be excessive.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Is there any other hand up there? Is there anybody else here for this particular hearing? Okay, then I'm going to,
Actually, if I could just say one more thing about the roadway, and I think it's just, I think you're aware of it, but other people may not be aware that if you're gonna be increasing the number of children there, it's gonna be 139 from what I understand, and that's almost tripling the number that you have now. And so that, the engineering for that roadway, it's gonna be at least 300 passenger trips a day. And that's not just a driveway for a house. I mean, that is a very engineered thing. So that's where I think the concern comes in, from the amount of destruction that needs to take place in order to engineer a roadway to access it. And I totally understand about the safety, but again, I'm just trying to speak for the trees, I guess. So thank you.
so if there are no further comments regarding the child care expansion, yes? Wait till I'm closing and you raise your hand.
Hi, I'm Andrea Sandbrook. I'm a resident of Middlebury. And I also live in the early childhood circles that Linda and her work does, and they do really amazing work, particularly through COVID years, and it's not over yet. To me, the investment in being able, we have such a domino opportunity here to be able to increase the viability of Vermont, the health and wellness and future emotional and cognitive and physical learning of our future generations who've gone through so much trauma. So high quality programs like this will make a difference in everyone's futures. Being able to have families be able to come to Vermont in all of their industries. In the work that I do, I've had 2 doctors that came to Vermont and said, we have a house, we have no childcare. And I don't know if they were able to take those jobs at UVM. So I'm really much in support of this. I just wanted to be able to say that early childhood is the place where we can really change the future. We can change our town. And we can change the shape of Vermont without changing the culture of Vermont by being able to bring young families in so that they stay. And even when they fly in their college years, they want to come back. And this is a place where young families want to grow. So I say kudos to Linda and all of the work, and looking at the timeline and the care and attention, not only that you give to your families, but that this project, I fully support it, and I just want to say awesome work. We need more programs like this in Vermont.
Thank you. There's been a lot of years in the works.
Can I just say something?
I'm just going to warn you guys, this is going to be a long meeting. If you keep jumping in on stuff, just, okay, go ahead.
Actually, I wasn't going to say anything because he was going to jump on me, didn't
Well,
he? I said there was
we've got a very packed meeting, and so
I
let's
understand,
make
but
it to
I
the
think one thing
point.
that should be said before you go is that I can't speak for other board members, but the last time this presentation was given to it, there was enthusiastic support. And quoting Brian, the 2 biggest concerns for this board in town are childcare and workforce housing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I second that.
Third that.
So I'm going to close, if there are no other further comments, I'm going to close the hearing. And now, pleasure of the board. And this is a great opportunity for you to make that motion.
Okay, I move to sign the resolution for VCDP Grant Application Authority for the Community Child Care Expansion Project.
Second.
There we go.
Said it first.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And we're sorry to have to drag you back and having not gotten the process right, but we certainly are in wholehearted support of it and really want to see this come to fruition.
Thank you very much, and we greatly appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have reconsideration of August 9th Select Board vote on zoning amendments. We also found that we had, when Ben Putnam, the counsel for the Select Board, reviewed, we basically had a defective vote, and that the action was not valid. And so to cure that, we're bringing it back to the board again this evening. And so this is on our agenda, and I know there are people here that are interested in speaking to that, because we're going to have to hold a new vote and decide the direction of this. And there's been letters that have been entered since then, and I will lead with John Tenney, who I'm sure wants to speak on this. So,
Brian, could we back up 1 second? Just looking at what the process and the procedure is where we are right now.
so we had I told you I would verify with Benj.
Yes.
We had Kathleen and I had a call with Benj.
I got the notes of that here.
Just before the meeting.
Yeah, 6:31 PM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Benj says that it is basically it was a defective process.
Right.
And so we need to redo the process.
Right. My understanding then is that we are looking at the amendments that were brought to us by the Planning Commission before our prior meeting. That is the set of zoning amendments in front of us right now, because we did not warn the amendment that we made at the last meeting.
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that was clear to everyone.
Yes.
That right now, the zoning in front of us
Is what we had before us at the last meeting.
yes. And if
Because the
we,
change that we made
yes,
is non-valid change.
yes. And if we wish to change it, we will need to warn a new meeting. We cannot adopt any changes from what we got at the last meeting tonight.
You just, you got it straight.
Very good. Just wanted that to be up front before we begin.
I believe the audience accepts and understands that as well.
Yes.
It might also be worthwhile to mention that this is not a DRB hearing, that there's no application before us for student housing or something where you would give testimony like you would at a DRB hearing. Some of you are used to that rhythm, and I know sometimes it can be confusing to go to different meetings of different boards. This is a hearing to review the zoning bylaw amendment that's been before the planning commission worked on over the last years.
For the record, I'm John Tenney, and thank you for letting me speak. I am aware from seeing notes in the Select Board packet that there was a memo from the Planning Commission regarding the actions of the last meeting, but I have not seen that memo. Can you recite that memo or share it?
It's available on the website.
Find it.
Sorry you didn't see it.
Yeah, it was in the packet.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I just saw that there was notice of, in the agenda additions. I wanted to understand their criticism.
I have it, but it's.
Planning
You have it?
Commission memo.
This is what he's talking about, right? Planning Commission,
Yeah.
proposed bylaw amendment memo.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see it.
Well, you're talking about the note, which one are you talking about?
In Kathleen's board agenda packet notes, the Cliff Notes, she refers to a memo from the Planning Commission objecting to the position and the action that this board took at the last meeting.
That's correct. It's
Yes.
dated August 18th.
It's a couple pages long, and
I mean, it defines student housing, it lists the pertinent chapters and sections in the statutes, and then it gives the recommendation that we send things back to the Planning Commission.
I'm trying to understand the logic of the objection.
To the last vote?
Yes.
There's no objection. It's actually just a memo that outlines the issue and straightens out why they wrote it the way they did. So that when these guys reviewed that bylaw that's last revised 7/15 that I presented at the last hearing, they were saying that it should have been probably adopted just as it was. And if they want to make a change, that it should go back to the planning commission.
Yeah, I don't think the memo is not the objection. The objection is from bench in our process.
All right, okay. So I would only take your time to quickly recap the logic and reason that I brought and John McPartland along with me in terms of pushing for a change in the application of the regulation. In the current zoning regulations and in the proposed regulations, you have an awkward form of defining students. It's awkward in the way that it calls students as 4 or more. And because of that confusing language, I think it leads to misunderstanding of the rules and the intent. College students are allowed to find housing in all zoning districts without any conditional approval throughout the town. And this is true in the current zoning and true in the proposed zoning. The only regulations that are put forward are the continuation of the regulation on a concentration of students, defined as 4 or more. And that the regulations only control and prohibit the students in those numbers with the obvious intent of the regulation to control and limit the concentration of students at one location, to reduce, obviously, the tendency and the opportunity for bad behavior as a crowd. The kind of issues that I have brought and others have brought of student activities in the crowd form. The regulations on student occupancy must be applied by a property definition, not by an apartment or a dwelling unit application, to provide that limiting intent. If you don't apply it by a property, if you apply it only by apartment unit or number of bedrooms or so far, you have no limits at all. You've voided the intent, and you might as well not ever mention students in the zoning code at all, because in fact you have no way to limit them. So the cases that we brought to you, 53 North Pleasant and 13 Washington Street Extension, really are prime examples where you have a surging crowd force which creates its own dynamic. And what we've seen as a result are out of control horror shows. And we'll get more of those if we keep bringing student athletic teams in, as they're trying to do, and place them in those occupancies. We're going to get the same behavior, and we'll have learned nothing. We need to limit the number of students that can be in one property so that we get a dispersal of the students, and we reduce that tendency for misbehavior. And that's really the whole argument here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Questions from you?
Anybody?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Derek Doucette, and I serve as Dean of Students at the college. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I wanted to provide some additional context for Mr. Tenney's comments so that we can understand the situation out in the community, what a potential impact for some of the proposed changes might be, and also share with you the expectations we have of our students and how we can hold them accountable for those expectations when we're informed that they're not meeting them. Part of the problem that we experienced in the instances that Mr. Tenney is describing was that we were not informed of them until it was far too late to take action at the end of the year when they had already departed or were in the process of departing. So I'll keep my comments brief, and I'm going to make 4 points for you today.
If you could speak up, that would be great.
Yes, certainly. Sorry about that. I'll keep my comments brief, and I'm going to make 4 points for you today. One, I'm going to share with you the actual number of students out there in the community and describe for you a little bit about how we manage that number so that we can understand not just the density in a particular area, but the density in the community. I'm going to share with you our expectations for students living in the community and how we hold them accountable for those expectations when we're informed of instances in which they fail to meet them. And then I'm going to share a recent example of those expectations and systems being applied. And then finally, I'll close with just a quick summary of the impact of these proposed changes. And I promise all of that won't take long. So our residence life staff keeps the number of off-campus students in the vicinity of 120 students at any one time. We do this by, I apologize. Our residence life staff keeps the number of students at approximately 120 at any one time through an approval process. We vet the conduct records of those students before they're allowed off campus. And we are very careful and selective. It's not the case that we try and export sports teams, although I would take issue with the characterization of sports teams as inherently problematic. But it's not the case that we force sport teams into off-campus residences. The other constituency or group of students that are approved to live off campus are a small number of students who need to be approved for ADA accommodation purposes. We're legally and ethically obligated. Together, those two numbers total, we anticipate this year 137 students, which is fewer than 5% of our student population, which is an extremely low number relative to many of our peer institutions, just for context. Those students are expected to conduct themselves as good and respectful neighbors, and they're expected to abide by all of our on-campus conduct policies and the town's noise ordinances and any other applicable ordinances. We can hold students accountable when they fail to meet those expectations if we're told about it in a timely fashion. We were not in this previous set of circumstances that I fully agree with Mr. Tenney were unacceptable behavior. But when we are informed of problems, we can address them promptly and effectively. An example of a recent incident in which we did that was some behavior that Mr. McPartland shared with us 2 days ago. Perhaps it was only 1 day ago. While that behavior at the 13 Washington Street Extension property didn't, to my knowledge, rise to the level of a noise violation or any other ordinance violation, it still had an impact on Mr. McPartland. I recognize that, and I've had a conversation immediately within 24 hours with those students, as has Coach Ritter. It happens that those students are members of the football team. And the result of that, I think Mr. McPartland would share, is that he received a written letter of apology. Again, these students didn't violate the noise ordinance, but they had an impact. They recognized that impact. They wrote a written letter of apology, and they included, what's that? Oh, sorry. They included personal contact information so that if any other issues arose, they could be addressed directly to the students. That came about because John let us know that there was a problem when we responded promptly and effectively. Finally, I'll close by quantifying the impact of these potential changes. I've taken a look at our off-campus residences. We know where our off-campus students live. We collect that information over the course of the summer, and now we have relatively complete information for our students for the coming year. I've laid that information over the town zoning map, and I've read the bylaw changes. And I would estimate that this would impact approximately 80 students over properties owned by 12 individual landlords. Of those 80, approximately 30 would end up with the potential to have leases in properties where they are prohibited from living because of the number of students, 4 or more, in a particular property, not a particular housing unit or dwelling, a particular property. The remaining students would be in locations that would require a conditional use permit, all of which is occurring within 3 weeks of the start of classes, which is not, in my estimation, reasonable. So I'm in no way minimizing the impact that student behavior potentially has in the community. I'm emphasizing our ability to address it effectively with our own processes when we're informed And I don't think it's necessary to address it with the blunt instrument of changes to the zoning laws. And I'm going to just remind this group finally, one of the main concerns in the summer of 2020 before the college reopened for COVID was concern over off-campus housed students and their behavior in the community and the potential for spreading the virus that behavior would have. There were many doom and gloom scenarios, understandably, at the time. I came before this board virtually, and I told you we could deal with those problems and address them. And there was not, to my knowledge, a single instance in that first year of the COVID era in which an off-campus residence posed any problem at all. We addressed it then. Now that I am aware of the problem at these particular properties, we can address it there, and we can address any future issues that arise. Thank you.
So
Any
I didn't
questions?
catch your name.
My name is Derek Doucette. I serve as Dean of Students at the college.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah?
You sure?
Go for it.
I'm just wondering, do you cap the, is the number of students you allow off campus capped at that 5%, or is that just circumstantial?
The 5% was for perspective. We keep it at 120 students, and we can fluctuate that as needed, but we keep it at 120, again, plus, on occasion, students who have ADA accommodations, which we're required to obligate.
Right, the 17
Yep.
additional for this year.
Yep.
But you try to keep it at that, and that's written in your process somewhere.
That's a matter of policy. The Res Life staff comes to me and says, this is our housing situation in a given year. May we expand or retract that number? And I say yes, but I never approve it beyond 120.
Okay. And then what is your process for approving students to be off campus? Do they just find a place and let you know, and if they're within that 120 students, or like which direction does the process go, I guess?
The process works in that students actually enter a lottery. Students who are interested in living off campus enter a lottery, and we draw the number of slots plus an extra few that we have open based on that cap of right around 120 students. And then we review the students who actually are picked through that lottery. This is the point in the process where we check their conduct records, for example, to make sure that these are not students who have been posing particular problems on campus. We specifically don't want to export students who have proven themselves to be particularly problematic off campus. So that's the process. Lottery, students win the lottery, then we vet their application. If those applications are turned down, then we go to the next one on the wait list, because again, we draw a few extra in anticipation of having to make some of those decisions.
So in the case of 13 Washington Street extension, with, it seems like a lot of football players happen to be there, they all just applied individually and they all happened to be approved, all on the same team?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I certainly don't know, there was no indication, for example, there would be no indication in the process that they intended to live together, nor would there be an indication on their application that they're members of an athletic team. That's information I found out in the context of this conversation to make sure that I was aware of what was going on at those properties.
Right.
Yeah.
And how many students normally apply to live off campus if you cap it at 120?
That's a good question. There are years when, I don't have a hard and fast number for you, there are years when the number of students who apply significantly exceed the number of students that we have space for. There are other years when it doesn't happen. It's often limited by the rental inventory as well. We certainly recognize that.
One more question, sorry.
Of course, no, that's okay.
For students that have applied to live off campus
Yes.
and been approved,
Yep.
Two questions actually. Is that contingent on their year at school? Like, they have to be juniors, they have to be seniors?
That's correct. Yeah, we don't allow, we don't allow, except for ADA accommodations,
Right.
again, we don't allow first years and sophomores.
Okay,
Yep.
and then once they're approved, if they're approved their junior year, they're also approved for senior year?
Unless there's an issue that we find out about, for example, and they would count toward that cap. In other words, they would reduce
Right.
the number of spots we have open in the subsequent year.
Right, okay.
Does that help?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I got a quick question.
Yeah.
You said that you were not informed on time about these incidents. When were you informed, by who?
I received an email from, actually, the first indication I had of the incidents at the 53 North Pleasant Street property, as I recall, was an email from Luther Tenney, Mr. Tenney's son, who also works at the college, who said, my parents are having some trouble with students. could you help? And I said, yes, of course, and I reached out to Mr. Tenney. That was, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, I would say late April, perhaps, or early May.
School was still in session at that time?
We were in finals week, I believe. I'd have to look at the exact
And
dates.
at the beginning of the school year, what is your policy if they violate any of these things, the students on the off-campus housing? If they don't follow the policy, what is the consequences?
I want to make sure I understand your question. So if
Violate any of these, you have a policy that you have to behave in a decent way or whatever.
That's right.
And if they don't follow that, what is your policy after that?
It would depend on the specific circumstances, because disciplinary processes at the college are cumulative. So a student who had no disciplinary record, and in most cases, that would be our students, or very limited disciplinary record, that would be the students living off campus. In most cases, not all. The likely outcome would depend on the specific circumstances, but it might be something from a letter of warning, if it's a relatively minor violation, all the way up to official college discipline, which is something that resides on the college's permanent record. It's a very serious consequence, because it means that if they're asked by a graduate school application committee or the government if they've ever been subject to official discipline, they have to answer yes and then explain why. And in extreme cases, we could force them to return to campus if we had to.
Have you ever done that?
Not in my time. I've not been aware.
And besides Luther Tenney, anybody else has complained to you about these?
Mr. McPartland did?
Okay.
Yep. After Mr. Tenney. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. I think we're done with you, Derek. I think we have another individual to speak.
Can I go?
You, yes. Yes, sir.
Alrighty. I am Kevin McGrath, 51 North Pleasant Street, next to notorious 653 North Pleasant Street. Our driveways are next to each other. So I'd like to comment on the student behavior and how the property is managed and the need to limit the student occupancy per building in order to prevent the disruptive behavior that we've endured for over 6 months.
Something I forgot to mention that might interest you. I apologize. So there's going to be a DRB hearing for the North Pleasant Street property on September 18th at 7 p.m.
That's a
If people want to submit comments, on what happens at North Pleasant Street, what goes on
Yeah.
that property.
Okay.
And I'll leave that up to you, how you want to manage that, but piece of
Yeah,
intel.
I do ask people if you're just piling on about examples, if you could keep it
Okay,
really
okay.
brief,
I
because
understand.
we've got
I'll skip the drunk
several.
student stuff, I'll skip all that stuff. Okay. It is marketed in such a way that it's only marketed to college students. Comes with the fire pits and the party lights and the Middlebury College blue lounging chairs and the drinking game ping pong tables. We get ping pongs in our yard. I had to explain to my wife what a ping pong is used for in drinking games. So we get the ping pongs in there. It's strictly a party-ready place, a dream come true. Students are packed in with no regard to actual bedroom designation in order to collect maximum rent. No landlord will collect $6,200, on that property if it wasn't for this formula. There's no distinction between the apartment units. The units are used interchangeably, just as all the party favors are provided by the property owner. They're shared. Okay, the building is no more than an off-campus residence hall, period. There have been at least the 7 official tenants, maybe more last spring. That's 100% student occupancy as designed. And with that number, critical mass is achieved, and then it's over, believe me. The house has been hereon declared a public nuisance by Middlebury Police. No changes have really been implemented since then. Obtaining the nuisance designation was difficult and required significant documented evidence and due diligence. Better safeguards really need to be in place. So when I hear Mr. Doucette saying, I only heard it in XYZ date, I didn't even know who Mr. Doucette was. I didn't even know that the college really, had a responsibility in this. But, you know, the police were out there, as it was documented, you know, starting, I think it was in April, but I'm not sure about that. Okay. In terms of the nuisance status, the nuisance ordinance applies to the building, not to the individual units. Noise violations apply to the building. Nuisance applies to the building. I think that the student rental occupancy should apply to the building. No due respect to Mr. Doucette, but Middlebury College has been complicit in subcontracting the housing services. No one from the college contacted me directly, even though my name is plastered throughout the July 7th Addison Independent article, and my information was sent to them via email. If the college took this situation seriously, they would not allow any students living at that address, period. Lastly, cars and the real number of people occupying the building. I installed wooden borders in my driveway simply to contain stones, and they've been destroyed 3 times by students driving over them to and from the 53 North Pleasant Street driveway. The number of motor vehicles in the driveway, on the lawn, anywhere, is unimaginable, upwards of 20 cars. It's really more of a shopping mall parking lot than a driveway. There's with little egress except to drive over neighbor's property. Typically, there are more people in the house than officially live there. That goes without saying. In the case of 53 North Pleasant Street, well over a dozen people can be bunked up for days at a time. After all, they're college students. They have boatloads of friends. Once the student count and the student concentration reach tipping point, they simply do as they please. Please take the important step tonight and limit the number of students who can reside in a building. We need a circuit breaker to contain unruly behavior and maintain the character of the neighborhood. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you.
We do have someone online.
Okay,
Mine's like 30 seconds. Thank you.
go ahead. Yeah.
My name's Jason Murray, and I got one question for the dean and the board. 120 students is roughly 30 apartments, and I want to know how many of the college, all these houses they buy all over Middlebury, how many do they supply to families per homes?
Who was online, Kathleen?
Quite a few, actually.
Katie Kruger.
I don't get an answer to my question, or
I don't think there's anybody here that can tell you that.
Dean gone? Can you leave?
No, I'm here.
So I'm wondering how many of their buildings that they buy all over Middlebury, got the blue, college buildings on them. They put 120 people out in our community, which is at 4 apiece is 30 apartments. How many of their buildings are they renting out to families in our community?
77 units. There's 77 units that the college owns that rents out to faculty and staff and their families.
The faculty, staff, and their families. But how many families in the Middlebury community?
Well, isn't that families in the Middlebury community?
Well, yeah, but when my daughter has to live with me because she has grandkids and can't find any apartments in Middlebury, and there's 120 college people living out there in apartments, and they jack up the prices of rent, that creates a problem for everyday working Americans and families.
I would just caution you that college is playing the biggest role in trying to bring housing to this community
Then why
at
can't they
our
build their
request.
own dorms?
They were working on that. So we're working on a different issue right
Well, I
now.
wish they'd offer my daughter a place to stay.
I would prefer not to sidetrack it, and
I'm not, I'm
it
just.
doesn't do any of us any good here blasting the college.
I'm not blasting them, they're taking up housing.
No, I don't agree with you.
Well,
Katie?
my
So
daughter's moving
I've got somebody online here.
Katie, you've been recognized.
Can you guys see me?
No, but we can
Or
hear
hear
you.
me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I live at 55 North Pleasant, so the other side of 53 North Pleasant, from Kevin who spoke earlier. I think you know, I think it's been made clear to everyone what the experience of living next door to this house is like. So I don't want to kind of be the dead horse there. What I will say is that I started calling the college in early April after a party where one of the attendees was apparently parked into the driveway at 55 and drove across the lawn during mud season to drive directly across to my driveway to get out. And I got no response from the college. I called again about a week or so later. I got no response. Basically, I think I called 4 times and I really didn't get any traction until Luther Tenney reached out to the dean. Feel like this idea that the college was not informed is, I would disagree with the idea that they were not informed, because I informed them several times of what was going on and I couldn't get anyone to talk to me about it, which has been frustrating. And I will say even when there is not a loud disruptive party going on, simply having that number of people in the house next door changes sort of the tone and tenor of the neighborhood. It's a lot of cars, it's a lot of people. I have small kids, I worry about them, there's a lot more traffic all of a sudden. So I think the idea that, a person can just decide to put, this house is, at least when it was listed on the MLS, it was a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom. And now, there's 7+ kids in it. That's just a very different use. And I think it just doesn't make sense that a person would be able to buy a house, completely change the use of it, and have it be able to be done without anything to stop that, or at least have a discussion with the neighbors first.
Jen, is that house subject to conditional use approval?
Where is it located?
The one we're talking about?
53. Yes,
Number what?
53, I think, right?
Oh, the one that we're talking about with John? I thought you meant with the caller.
That's the same house.
Same one. Yeah, it's a conditional use.
Is
There's
that-
actually going to be a DRB hearing held on September 18th to review an application for student housing. That would be the appropriate venue for people to bring all of these concerns about that property. What's under discussion tonight is whether or not you should keep the definition of student housing as 4 or more students per dwelling, or change it to 4 or more students per house. Keeping it, so the Planning Commission feels that it needs to stay 4 or more students per dwelling, because that's the only reasonable way that our zoning administrators can administer that rule. Probably the noise ordinance needs to be looked at. Probably some more communication needs to happen with the college. You could have a meeting where you took more of this input, but the question is per dwelling unit or per house.
Wrong.
And just so you know, not wrong.
Yes, wrong.
And just so you know, the 4 or more per house wouldn't preclude, the 4 or more per dwelling, still sends them in front of the DRB for conditional use on North Pleasant Street. That makes sense.
And that's why I'm asking, because everything I'm hearing is centered on one dwelling other than John McFarland's particular issue. Are there other houses that we're dealing with here?
My name is Cindy Slater.
For folks at home, it'd be great if you could use a microphone.
My name is Cindy Slater, and I live here in Middlebury, and my memory is poor in terms of the street number, but there's another property that I have personally called about repeatedly. I've never contacted college people, but it's on Cross Street, right as you come across the bridge, heading toward Court Street. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a variety, I'm not sure what the mix of people, but you know, we live probably like a block and a half away, and, you know, my husband and I have had to call, you know, the police, you know, for noise ordinance assistance. So it's another property, you know, why I'm here tonight, just to try to help support being mindful in some way of, you know, how can we have another piece of control. I've never, you know, contacted the college about that property because, as the other gentleman observed, I, you know, didn't really know that was a route to follow. But I would just add that it's not just, you know, the properties that you've already had underway, so.
Derek, how long have you been with the college?
This is my 19th year.
So it seems to me like we had a flare-up of issues. It's been quite a while now, and we had a call process where it immediately got to the right people at the college that action could take place. And it's not, you know, I'm calling the college and you don't necessarily ensure it gets to the right channel. Is there a way we could, it seems like we've got a few problematic dwellings, and one of them is going to go through a conditional use anyways. Is there some appetite and a process that you could put in place that would make it easier for communication with the town people?
Absolutely.
That,
I'd be happy to go ahead and process and share it with this body and get it out, the word out to the community.
John?
I want to make it clear that I corresponded with the college first when we had trouble. On June 6th, I wrote to the college president, and I followed that up with other correspondence. I have not had one response from the administration, nothing meaningful at all from the president's office, nothing meaningful from Mr. Doucette, who didn't respond at all until I prompted him in late July. And so let history be your guide. The performance on these properties is awful. And the response of the college is one of just trying to push it off, ignore it, run out the clock. That's what they're doing now. That's his argument, run out the clock. So.
Well, the last time
I'm
we
angry.
did this.
You can tell that.
I can tell. I've been dealing with you for a couple months on this,
Yeah.
John. It's not going to do any good to keep beating up the college if we're not going to take some sort of action and put some process in place. And I'm about trying to solve the issue.
So
okay?
am I, but I brought a
so
suggestion for a solution.
You did, and we tried. It didn't work. Derek?
Respectfully, John, what you just said about our communications is absolutely false. You and I sat in my office and had a meeting and talked about this, and you say that I didn't respond until late July. I just want to be clear about that. That is absolutely unequivocally false.
You did meet, but all you did was listen and do nothing.
No.
Sue?
Did you want to let Peter?
Peter?
Whichever you think is the right.
I think I can bring some broader perspective to all of this. My name is Pete Jetty, for the record. I have housed probably 200 college students over the last 12 years. In addition to that, I was born here, and I lived in between KDR and the Slug House back in the 70s. And there were times when you could put your hand on the wall of our living room and feel the bass thumping from the Slug House. So there has been an evolution in the behavior of off-campus students that is quite remarkable from my perspective. But I think we're really missing the point here as it pertains to the greater population of kids that live in off-campus houses. I own the building, the Dyer Block, which is at 61 Main Street. A good friend of mine owns the Leather Works, which is where Benj Detman's old office used to be. And another friend of mine owns a property on College Street with several apartments in it. I have never, in 12 years, had a call or a complaint as it pertains to 61 Main Street. And I'm pretty sure that's the case of Matt Bonner with the Leatherworks and Evan Punderson. The kids that, and I've gotten to know a lot of them, that I've had as tenants are generally kids that are too serious to still live in a dorm. Most of them like to save money, and they can save a lot of money by living off campus, paying rent, and feeding themselves. I found laughable when I read in the comments recently about super rents, though I guess from some of the comments I've heard about the properties specified here tonight, there is an out-of-town landlord who charges an exorbitant sum of money to rent his properties. But the kids I have had are wonderful, they're responsible, they're quiet, they're respectful, and I own a house on Short Shannon Street where I've had similar luck. I actually, on the flip side, had a party house that I owned at 128 Weybridge Street. And I was very involved in trying to modify the behavior of the kids over 3 years. Eventually, I sold it to one of the neighbors because they didn't want to live near college kids anymore, and I said, it's yours. I grew up here. I don't want to have a house in my name that's been a problem in the neighborhood. And interestingly enough, the house and the property that I've had the only problems with was a 3-bedroom unit. It housed 3 kids. I was there all the time. So I knew that there were only 3 people living there. So to come up with a rule based upon 4 residents is completely arbitrary. When my 12-year-old daughter heard my wife and I discussing this the other night, she said, Mom and Dad, one person can invite 50 people over, just like 4 people can invite 50 people over. So to use a blunt instrument like zoning to solve the problem of a landlord who's obviously doesn't live here and has no respect for the neighbors of the properties that he owns is like using a chainsaw when a scalpel is necessary. I mean, most of these kids are great, and I wish Evan Punderson was here, and I wish Matt Bonner could be here tonight, because the vast majority of the students that they've encountered, and I've talked to both of them, are similar to the ones that I've encountered. And it just sucks for all of us that there's a few bad apples and one bad landlord that is not being held accountable. I would suggest that, you know, either there is some way to coordinate with the college, so perhaps they have an approved landlord list, so out-of-town landlords have a harder time housing college students. That's one remedy that's popped into my head. Or perhaps we could have certain neighborhoods where off-campus housing isn't allowed at all. I've not read all of the minutes from the past meeting, so maybe that's been thrown out there. But you know, you need to be really careful with how you regulate this, because you'd be hurting a lot of kids who are having a great experience living off campus and saving a few bucks. You'd be hurting landlords, and you may not solve the problem if you use the wrong instrument. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I think you're good, Peter. Thank you. John? Sure. So I'm going to take 2 more, and then I'm going to give the select board an opportunity to talk here amongst themselves. So, John?
I think I'll be brief. So how many people are here concerning this particular item? There's a concern. I had thumping against my wall 2 weeks ago, the base coming through. It's 10, well, no, actually, first time it happened, it was 10 below 0.
We live on the other side of it.
Okay.
We live at 39 Seminary, so.
Okay. I guess if we stay the course with the definition, Jen, of 4 students per dwelling unit, the house next to me would have 12 students. So we really need to drop the statement in the zoning ordinances, pending zoning ordinance, that student housing is, sure. So if we allow 4 students per residential unit, then next door to me is going to allow 12 students And so how can we say that student housing is prohibited in R8 when there's 12 students next to me?
Do you want me to answer his question?
Please.
It's because student housing is defined as 4 or more students. The
That's
idea.
sensibly.
So the idea is that, as Peter Jetty said, you could have one student that invited all their friends over. Zoning is not the best tool for trying to regulate this at all. If we were to try to use zoning to regulate the tool, then we would try to regulate that housing type that's a congregate housing type, where there's a lot of students sharing one kitchen, perhaps dining together and then partying together, what we typically think of as an off-campus house or a student house. And so the Planning Commission decided that that would be 4 or more students in a dwelling unit. So you might have 12 students, that might be their identity, a college student, but they're gonna be split up into separate units and no more than 4 of them in those separate units. And so our hope is that they won't be getting together and partying, because they're all gonna be taking dinner and socializing in separate places.
And Derek Doucette mentioned that this could be impacting up to 40 students across town, and I would, I would suggest it's actually impacting 20 landlords who might have to pay a penalty for breaking the zoning variance. And they could, as far as Tinley's concerned, he can write that off as a business expense. And in fact, I've subsidized him for his entire first semester, since he's taken away fencing and other property that's gonna cost me about $15,000 to pay for, so he's already subsidized. Does that make sense?
Not really. I think you're talking about not the student aspect of it, but you're talking about the aspect of a person, a landlord who's purchased some property, it's conflicting, we're talking one on the zoning, the other on a landlord issue.
So if you go with 4 students per building, then he'll be out of compliance, he'll have to pay a penalty. That's his choice.
Well, you threw out the $15,000 thing that you were subsidizing, which.
Yeah, 15 weeks.
It's a red herring there.
Okay, sorry. 15-week semester, $1,000 a week penalty. I've already covered that for him as a subsidy, because I'm paying for the repair that he caused.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fred Dunnington is online. Did you have
Fred?
Fred?
Okay. Like I said, I'm going to take 2 more. We've got an airport thing that I've promised the airport, and how many of you are off from Pleasant Street? There's a lot of hands raised, or, okay. And how many over, is it in regards to this one landlord? Yes. The majority of you? And maybe, let me try it a different way. How many of you are not in regards to this particular landlord? Okay, the issue is the landlord, right? It's not the zoning. We have, so at least one of the properties, I would hope that all of you will come to that conditional use application DRB hearing, because that's the opportunity we have to control that one particular landlord and his utilization of that property.
Is that to limit the occupancy to 6?
No,
2 units, 3 per unit?
It's an application for student housing on North Pleasant Street. And you can submit your comments in writing, or by email, or you can come in person, or you can do all 3.
Would you elaborate on what you just said? What are you going to consider on September the 17th?
So the landlord, is it Richard Tinsley? Tinsley. Yeah. Wants to apply to us to have student housing at 53 North Pleasant Street. And so that means that he wants to have 4 or more students per unit in one or both of the units.
4 per unit, so conceivably 8.
Conceivably 8.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
So it gets worse.
Well,
The storyline potentially gets worse.
I don't know, there's a hearing, so you can come and talk about it. The DRB has the option to deny it if he's demonstrated bad behavior, which it seems like he may have, so
Has he
all of this
received-
testimony will be really relevant to that hearing.
Has he received use for 13 Washington Extension?
No, I don't believe so.
Is that on the docket that night?
No, it's not, it's just for the North Pleasant Street property.
But he's already renting to students at both locations anyway, right? They're already there.
I haven't been there or inspected the I
They
can't
are.
verify.
Oh,
Mhm.
they're there.
They're there.
So what would change if this use is denied?
Then he wouldn't be able to have 4 more students per unit at that location.
But he would still rent to students?
I don't know, he might, I can't speak for him. So that's the time to apply pressure to him directly, he should be there in person.
So he can rent for 6.
I don't know, we could speculate all day long. My point is, you should come to that hearing and you should submit your comments. And if they're fresh in your mind now, write them down when you get home. Email them to me and then come in person as well.
18th, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, right here. But that's okay, that's what DRB
Fred.
hearings are for. It's that process to get it all out.
Does Sue Ritter want to talk? Does Sue Ritter want to talk? Does Sue
She
Ritter
does,
wanna-
but I think we'll have Fred speak first here. Fred, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
We can.
So, the issue of student housing is not something that was new. In my 32 years working with the town, it came up often. We did the best we could. We wrote a noise ordinance in its first edition. We also began to change how we dealt with the college in zoning as a planned unit development. And in one of the first decisions on this, we required the college to disclose all of its off-campus housing, to disclose the total enrollment, and to deal with it as a development and its impact on the town. That authority still exists. But apart from that, tonight, we're dealing with whether to adopt the new zoning amendments. And I think to redirect you to that, those are worth adopting, in my opinion. I think that the issue of how to better regulate things going forward, and you're a legislative body, you're not in the role of hearing individual applications, although you've heard a lot of testimony about this. That's the zoning role to do and be appealed from. But in your legislative act, there's a general proposition that the proposed zoning amendments are more restrictive as respect to student housing on the town and in residential neighborhoods. And I would urge you not to lose sight of that, even though there's a lot of specific issues that will get worked through in the zoning process. I would just say also that I really want to join Laura Cermele's plea that you tune up the public nuisance ordinance. Zoning is not a great tool to regulate human behavior. And it's not just students. There are people who can be a graduate or be taking a year off from who also can party and impact neighborhoods. So in the time I was involved with this, we wrote it so as not to specifically mention students. We used unrelated people. That was an awkward tool. I think what they have done works better than the proposed zoning, and I would urge you to follow that and both urge the planning commission to update a proposal to better perfect this, as well as tune up your public nuisance ordinance. And I would also say there's one other tool in the zoning toolbox, and that's called interim zoning, that the select board can enact under 24 VSA 4415, which allows you to enact emergency measures more readily after a select board hearing, without going through the whole process. We've used this for Eastview, we've used it for big box retail and other things in the past. So there are tools in the toolbox, both the existing approval for the college, more ready enactment of things that you need, but you need to use all of the tools and not just focus on this. And you need to let the administrative actions go through the zoning process if they do, and not confuse them with your legislative process, which is on your agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Any questions of Fred?
And I have one correction to make. I just got a message from our beloved DRB coordinator who tells me I was wrong. It's the 12th. It's not the 18th. So please correct your calendars. I apologize.
Okay.
Are we going to get direct formal notice?
A butters will.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so you will because you're in a butter, yeah.
Okay.
7 o'clock?
7 p.m.
Sue, did you still want to say anything, or? I've bumped her in line here many times, so.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. Sue Ritter, Special Assistant to the President, Director of Community Relations. And just to clarify, I did respond to John on behalf of the President's office when we were
Please speak
emailed.
up.
I said I did respond to you, John, when you emailed the President's office as representative of Lori. I do want to say that I support the zoning bylaws as currently drafted by the Planning Commission. I, meaning the college. College supports that. And I agree with the comments today that the way to deal with this is through the public nuisance ordinance and not through a broad-scale wholesale change to the zoning, to the definition of student housing, for all the reasons that have been mentioned tonight. I think that's the right tool. We do work closely with MPD when there are incidents. I am not aware of an actual ordinance violation with respect to the Washington Street property, although I know there have been some disturbances that have upset Dr. McPartland. The college is sympathetic to that, and again, we're continuing to want to work with issues that come up. One of the residents, the tenants of that property, Cole Crider, is here tonight. In case anybody wants to hear from him, he would be happy to speak on behalf of the students that are living there as well. Just wanted to point that out. But I do support, the college does support the zoning amendments as drafted.
Does the college know that the nuisance ordinance was issued by Chief Hanley? Does Mr. Doucette know that?
Yes, we know that.
Okay.
We've seen the letter.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think it's officially been declared.
It's
in
here
the
on
process.
that,
Yeah,
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 that's
absolutely.
called, yeah.
We've seen it.
I understand.
Okay, I'm just going to survey the board here. Do you feel like you've heard enough testimony to make a decision on this?
Yes.
Anything, and do you have any questions? And where is the board at this point?
I know that there are housing advocates who were hoping that we would have this zoning in place at our last meeting. I think that we should definitely approve the zoning with amendments that are in front of us tonight. If we are unable to remedy the student housing issues through the other tools available, DRB, noise ordinance, public nuisance ordinance, we can revisit and do this as a specific set of zoning amendments, but I do not think we should hold up this entire package for this landlord and these 2 or 3 properties.
You said the amendment.
The zoning amendments that were
That's
brought
what we're
before us
doing.
at the last meeting?
Okay?
We have not formally adopted them now.
The whole, I got it, the whole one, not speaking, you got it.
You're saying, I'm sorry, you're saying to adopt them or not to adopt?
Yes, please.
To adopt.
I think you said that last meeting, too. I'm good.
You're good? So,
I'm good with it. I just have a couple of comments. One, I agree with Pete when he said that having the dwelling definition 4 per dwelling or 4 per unit, I don't think it makes a big difference because one student can invite 50 people, like you said, and it's
Please speak up.
possible. Oh, okay. No, he said one person can invite 50 people versus the 4 people can invite 50 people also. I think the noise ordinance, I support that. We should go after that also. Like Fred said, we should use all the tools available. But I'm in support with this amendment.
okay, then pleasure of the board. Would somebody care to make a motion?
I would very much like to move the amendments that we got back from the Planning Commission at our prior meeting as the package of zoning amendments that we adopt this evening. Is there
There is a
verbiage
motion.
here?
There is.
All right, let me find it.
I don't want to
Hang
have
on
to
one
bring
moment.
this
Let's do
back
this right.
before us
Yeah.
because we didn't have the incorrect verbiage.
Absolutely. Agenda placeholder, childcare. I move to refer the proposed zoning bylaw.
No.
No, that's not it.
That's not
No,
it.
no, no.
Just
I move
above
to
it.
adopt the 2022 bylaw amendment to the Middlebury Zoning and Subdivision Regulations as warned, dated April 22nd, 2022, and last revised July 15th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on it? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Derek, I would really like you to get back to me. As the chair of the select board, I feel I owe it to all these people here. I have a process to ensure that it gets to your desk on a timely basis. If there's a massive party at one of these houses and a disturbance, I think that, you know, a process that when they call the police, that the police can get a hold of you and the college can take control of the situation. And I know you've done it before. We've had this is nothing new. We had it, we've had a long period of quiet. We've got one landlord who's letting this get out of control. We're gonna put it through the DRB process with the conditional use. I think I would encourage everybody to make their experiences and concerns known, but at the same time, I hope our health and safety can take up the ordinance on noise, because one of the things is, I understand our noise is like 1 a.m. or so, I don't have it in front of me, which seems excessive as well. So I think we need to have the different stages work in concert with each other, and I think that's where we're going tonight.
I'm understanding a commitment of the board to continue to work with this issue, to this particular trouble spot, and look forward to trying to do that with you.
I saw the hands, John. It is a troubled spot, and we recognize that.
Thank
So we're gonna.
Brian, to respond to your request, absolutely, we'll have a draft of how we can communicate more effectively by next week.
Okay, appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, just one recommendation as it pertains to a noise ordinance, and every time we run other things. You're gonna have fines to the landlords, make them hurt, right? $500 doesn't do anything to that guy. $5,000 makes a statement. And I would imagine that they'd be much more attentive to the behavior of their tenants if they know that they're gonna pay a price for it.
Laura's listening. So.
And congratulations on your new bylaw. As beat up and hijacked as it was, you should go home feeling proud of yourselves. We're gonna have affordable housing.
Hey, thank you, John. Is Dan, you're with us?
Hello.
Water storage tank.
Ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So 2 items tonight. First one is about the water storage tank up on Chipman Hill. We have an engineering agreement with Dufresne Group for you to I guess the word is accept and send this, so we can send this off to the state. We looked at this some months ago when we decided to award the survey work as part of this agreement, so they could get going on that and get a little further down the road. So here we are further down the road. This agreement is for $62,000 with Dufresne Group. There's a few steps with this. One is you accept it, and then we send it off to the state. They review it, and this is all boilerplate agreement documents. It's quite lengthy. Apologize for that, but that's what the form the state wants it in. So the state reviews it and then sends it back to us. I guess you really don't need to see it again. You can just authorize Kathleen Ramsey to sign it once the state approves it. So I guess one of the important things on this is the schedule. That is, they would start design work on September 1st. We'd have some meetings with staff through the end of the year, and they would submit a permit to construct in December. And by February next year, there'd be 100% final design plans and specifications. At that point, we would need to be make a decision on how we're going to fund this project. I think the obvious thing to do would be to submit it for a DWSRF grant loan, but then probably grant forgiveness or loan forgiveness into a grant. That will be determined by the state next year. But this is getting everything in order.
so we can be in a position to hopefully receive some, a loan or possibly grant money. So the first step is for you to accept the engineering agreement, and we can forward it to the state.
Any questions? Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to accept the proposed engineering agreement with Dufresne's Group for final design phase services for the Chipman Hill Water Storage Tank project at a total estimated cost of $62,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, Adams Acres.
Yep, okay, so Adams Acres is a piece of, there was a development that was done many years ago. It is basically out in the Boardman Street area, and there's, I think there's 10 property owners that are part of this. Years ago, the state had individual stormwater permits for all of these property owners. Yeah, okay, the state decided they didn't want to do that anymore. And so they came to the town of Middlebury and the other communities around the state and said, we don't want to manage this, we want you to do it. And so, you know, lucky us, here we are. So this is a stormwater maintenance agreement between the town and the other property, or the other owners who are part of this original permit some years ago. And this is an agreement that Ben Putnam and Bill Kernan have worked together, and Kathleen to have, so there's an agreement on maintenance. They have to maintain the stormwater structure. In other words, might be a culvert entrance or a storm inlet grate, a swale. Anyway, they have to maintain their own property, and this is a means that the town would invoice them for their share of the permit, and then the town would basically manage it. It's just a method for all the parties who are part of this original permit to be under one management tool. So these documents would be signed by all the property owners, and hopefully make this more streamlined than what it is today. So that's what this is about. So we're asked you to authorize Kathleen to sign a memo of understanding between the town and all the property owners who are part of this original stormwater permit.
Any questions?
Do we have signatures from all the parties? Do we have signatures from all the parties so far?
You will.
Okay.
So you have to adopt this as a method, and then we go to the property owners and get them to sign on.
And all of the costs are prorated, including not just the engineering, but do we charge any kind of an administrative fee for doing the work for them?
We don't. If there's work that's done needed on a specific property, that's 100% theirs. This sharing is for the permit fee. So there's no sharing of between the property owners or the town on what happens on a specific property. That's their responsibility. This is the share, the cost of the fee for the state permit.
Okay, I mean, it just seems the rest of us have to pay a civil engineer to do all the work for us, and you're doing it all for them, and you're not charging anything, and it takes you time away from doing other stuff that's town business. These are private properties. It's just interesting how that occurs. I'm part of the...
I don't have it.
One of my properties...
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would have thought one of them, that they would have a property ownership group that would take care of that.
I can just... I'm not sure how that could work, I suppose, but the state has pretty much mandated us to be the managing partner of this, and we're not happy about it.
The state did that with us up in St. Albans with one of my properties, and one of the property, basically, we had to form a group, and we managed it. We pay a civil engineer to do all the work, and we split the cost. I don't know how the state could say the town has to take care of other commercial properties. They can say that they are not going to do individual permits, because we used to have an individual permit, and they want to lump them all together because they just don't have the time and manpower to deal with it, apparently, but.
Right, right. And so we're not partnership in the cost of other people who are part of this. We're not a part of that cost.
Are you
That's theirs.
Are you hiring the work done out, though, as far as the engineering of it?
No. No, so there's every 5 years, this permit has to be revisited and inspected by an engineering company. It has to be recertified. If there are deficiencies, those deficiencies have to be made, corrected, I should say, by that parcel. It is not a joint expense spread around the others or the town. So.
But you're gonna spread that engineering inspection in their fees, right? Or are you gonna eat all that under the town?
So, yeah, and number 4 on this, it says the town will bill each owner for its share of the common expenses on an annual basis. So, we have the ability to charge them for engineering services for if there's a deficiency that something fails, or in the 5-year renewal, they would be billed for their share. So it all gets split up.
Okay. This just brings me back to our discussion on fee charges, the amount of stuff we take on and never charge any fees, managing stuff for other parties. Okay. Any other questions?
All right.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the Adams-Akers Stormwater Memorandum of Understanding as a duly authorized agent of the town of Middlebury.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Is Bill with us, or are you?
Bill is not with us. Dan, are you able to cover the ordinance for the change in the water disconnect fee? Or this was added after you left the office for the day?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't do that one.
Okay. Heather Seeley is not here either, but I'd be happy to convey this information to you, if you'd like. At the Infrastructure Committee meeting last Thursday, DPW Operations Director Bill Kernan asked for the board's approval as the town's water commissioner to begin drafting a new water ordinance that addresses potential conditions under which the town can turn off service to water customers beyond non-payment of bills. As noted in the following excerpt from the meeting minutes, Kernan said that there is a water policy and not an ordinance, and this policy hasn't been reviewed in 24 years and is outdated. He said that he questions whether it should be an ordinance instead of a policy. He said that by statute, he isn't sure what he is allowed to do, and that right now, the only reason he can do a disconnect is for non-payment. Kernan said they have a commercial user that has refused to the town access to their property. He reported that they have a meter that does not work, so Kernan shut off the water but had to turn it back on after legal involvement because of no policy being in place for this reason to shut the water off. He said that because they are paying bills that are being generated by estimate, water access has to remain on. Bill Kernan also provided an example where an employee had an electrical shock while changing out a curb stop that wasn't working at a residential property from the service line from the house. The staff member was able to have a homeowner throw their service line disconnect to stop the shock from continuing while they completed the work. Kernan said they do not have the authority to not provide service because of this safety issue, because it's not in the policy. Kernan said that they are gathering info from other water districts on their policies and ordinances. He said this would need to go to legal review at some point because of the statute. Bill said he'd like authorization from the select board to move forward with drafting an appropriate water ordinance.
Seem cut and dried.
Yeah, I would think any ordinance we haven't looked at in 24 years is probably due for a refresher. And these sound like two serious impediments to providing service and getting paid for use.
And Heather said via text that she's interested in participating in the drafting.
Great. I will move to authorize DPW Operations Director Bill Kernan to begin drafting a new town water ordinance for consideration by the Select Board once it has undergone the appropriate legal review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. And now, this is agenda item to discuss the Middlebury Airport Master Planning Process and Act
Thanks, Dan.
250 application. This agenda is planned update and discussion regarding those two items. We anticipate receipt. Is somebody bringing us the position paper from MANA? Do we have that? Because it hasn't come to me yet, as far as what if there are any outstanding issues. So, Andy, if you want to
yes.
speak first, that would be great.
I do, although Eugene, where's Eugene? Do you want to speak first on that topic? Or should I just briefly?
Go ahead.
So, it would be Andy Sandbrook from 287 Airport Road. It would be our pleasure to provide a positioning statement, Brian, but we have, after the first meeting relating to the master plan, I sent in many questions. I know each individual member of MANA probably sent in multiple questions as well. We have not heard back from them. So at this current time, there's no point in having a position which may change depending on what the results are. So
Because we don't have the final master plan yet.
we don't. We have
No,
seen.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, we've seen probably 2/3 of it. The big pieces are missing are the airport layout plan and the environmental pieces of it. And but the biggest thing is we just the back end of the report we haven't seen it yet. So so there's no position paper tonight. But I do have some comments that are not coming from MANA, but from Andrea and myself. I think other members of MANA might want to speak as well. Shall I continue?
Please.
Based upon that?
We'll go ahead and just start, unless,
Yeah.
Eugene, did you want to speak first, or?
Well, he can finish. I mean,
No, you can come up, Eugene.
Okay. I'm here just to find out some information. Was there a plan with the select board to meet with us coming down the road here? Something that was talked about a couple weeks ago, that we were gonna have the select board with.
This is the meeting right here.
This is it?
We put it on the select board. You asked to have it on the
Then it
select
was
board
my fault. I
agenda.
didn't follow it then.
Okay.
No, I thought there was a special meeting, there's gonna be, you know, like tonight, there was a lot of other stuff going on, you guys got a lot of stuff going
Well,
on.
they're always, to take up, no, this is it.
Oh, this is
This
it.
was intended, that's why I sent out the note, that this was supposed to be it.
Okay, because I did ask a couple times there if, you know, if this was it, or was there gonna be a special one? And that, in my mind, that's what it was, there's gonna be a special one coming up. Obviously, I was wrong then.
So so you're not prepared for it, or you?
We're not.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, well, this is an ongoing process because the final, the final master plan is not published. We're gonna be briefed that. And we have the Act 250 process that's going on simultaneously, different, but two different issues. And so, but there was a request to have an opportunity to be on the agenda and be able to speak to some of the concerns to the select board to express them. And so that was put on the agenda tonight for that purpose.
That was? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not 100% got all the answers like what he was saying a few minutes ago.
Okay.
And the master plan is being completed, but not completed yet. So that be more information that we're gonna have so we can, when we're talking, we're all on the same page understanding stuff. That sound reasonable?
I'll put you back on at a later date. But just coordinate with me. I mean, Kathleen and I do the agenda, so you need to coordinate with the two of us when you're ready, and we'll see. I mean, sometimes, like, this agenda wasn't as packed, but we had some stuff that were procedural issues that brought it back to here and had to be addressed in a timely basis, and I apologize. It was not our intent to have a...
Right, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Yeah.
with that then, we'll bring Andy back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it's okay with the select board, I would like to make personal comments. This is not on behalf of Manor at all, but I do have a little party favor here for each of you if you're interested. Actually, I have 5 copies. I would like to just have these in your hands, because I don't think any of you came to the Act 250. I know, it was a rare show. I'm not going to go through this. This is just material to.
Do you want us to share?
But yes, the Act 250. As Brian said, there are 2 things going on at the moment. There's the Act 250 and the master plan. So the master permitting and the master plan, it can be somewhat confusing. But again, my name's Andrew, and my wife Andrea Sambrook, 287 Airport Road. Thank you for adding this important matter to the agenda. As I say, there's 2 ongoing development projects. I do want to add some commentary on what we heard on Friday, and then at the very end, briefly, just to touch upon the master plan. I think some other Manor members are intending to speak, so I don't want to hog the limelight here. So the actual comments on the master plan, I believe from a call today with V-Trans, that the public comment period on the master plan has been extended through August the 30th. So any comments that anyone has can be submitted to V-Trans to, you can find the address on the V-Trans website dedicated to the master plan, but it's the individual who's coordinating is Sean.Corbett, Corbett, @vermont.gov. So Sean is SHAUN. Corbett, Corbett, @vermont.gov. So again, comments through to the end of August 30th. So that explains why we have yet to receive anything back, and therefore we don't have a position yet on the master plan. We, Manor, I believe. So the Act 250 hearing was on Friday, and it was well attended by the public. So to use your comment tonight, Brian, I think that shows there's concern. And thank you, actually, Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. I think you went to you were there to the site visit at least, and I think to the hearing as well. So a couple of comments about this process. The Act 250 notices. So several months ago, Brian, if you recall, we came here. There was at least a couple meetings where the lack of notice to the adjoining landowners was raised. And that was a big issue, and you confirmed that you would make efforts to make sure that that didn't happen again. Well, it's happened again. So there's at least 3 neighbors who were not on the notice list for this Act 250 hearing. And oddly, maybe you'll find some humor, maybe we need a bit of humor now, but we've been told that if folks who did not receive notice, they could attend the meeting and state their grievance. So that would be, I think that's kind of ironic, right? Or it's funny, anyway, because how would you know to attend the meeting and state your grievance if you didn't receive the notice? Anyway, the site visit, again, I've never been to one of these before, and Brian, I know you have as a commissioner, but V-Trans did not peg out the development footprint when we all took a tour. So we were just looking at a green field at the time, which made it, I think, very difficult to imagine the scale of the proposed development, the extent and the scale and the location of it. It just wasn't pegged out, so it was pointed to up, and most of us walked over the area that they were that they're proposing. So what I've done, that's the point of this package, is just to sort of show you. I didn't frankly know.
Recording in progress.
I frankly didn't know what a 120 by 120 hangar would even look like. So in the package that you've got, I've sent some examples of what that thing could look like. And indeed, part of the issue with the Act 250 hearing is that neither did V-Trans present any images. Excuse me, correction. They presented images of current hangars at the airport, not artist rendition of what it could be. So in order to understand what this could look like, I've included some images of a large, medium, and a small hangar. Interestingly, I couldn't find an image of a 120 by 120 hangar, so I put in the package an 80 by 100 hangar. So that's the one with the pretty, with all the cars and planes inside it. That's that first one. So just be mindful that a 120 by 120 hangar would be 80% larger than what you're seeing on this. So that is the proposal at Middlebury Airport, to create a hangar that can contain all of that, almost twice that size. That's just one of the 9 hangars proposed at Middlebury Airport that we've seen. And
Actually, just to help you out, Andy, is they're actually proposing footprints, right? But what they build within the footprint may or may not be the full extent of the footprint. So the hangar may be that big or it may be smaller.
yes, thank you for presenting V-Trans' position on that.
No, I thought that was the truth.
Well, that is the truth, but the difficulty is to have a debate about whether that's good, bad, or indifferent without actually seeing the artist's rendition of what they're proposing.
I think that's very
So I think you would agree, Jennifer, that it could be that.
Right.
It could be that. It may not be that, but it could be that.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
Yes. So you can see on the map there are 9 spaces that are proposed, one of which, again, is 1.5 times, 1.8 times that size. So totally out of scale with what is currently at the airport, that we generally don't have an issue with, but this is out of scale and out of position. And I think it was difficult at the site visit to actually understand, by just looking at a field, what was proposed. So I thought I would share some of these images because it is. I think it's helpful, at least, to see that. So I think I do want to wrap up because I know other people want to talk, but. The concerns expressed at the Act 250 hearing, I think there were, I've noted 7 of them. Maybe others have, some people have others. There was a lack of data or little data provided, or the data provided had no backup in fact or reality. So, for instance, they provided a number in the application that talked about the estimated number of cars going backwards and forwards to this development. Well, they didn't say what that development was going to be, so it could be just simple storing of airplanes, which is what I think the layperson would understand as a hangar. But it could also be a manufacturing facility or indeed some other processing facility based in this area. So there was no description as to what they were intending to do with these footprints or these proposed hangars. So to provide a very even an estimate of 70 trips was just meaningless. It was just meaningless. So that was an example of the meaningless data that they'd actually provided. There was no noise evaluation or data provided because, again, they don't know what the hangars are going to be used for. There was no source material on implications for wildlife presented. So there's a lack of a coherent plan by V-Trans as to the what, the how, the why of the new hangar spaces. Is it going to be industrial? Is it going to be plane storage? Is it going to be manufacturing? We don't know. They didn't know. They couldn't tell us. So you could put 36 planes in this thing, 36 planes. Just to give you, if this is a 30 by 30 room, in that one big hangar, that's 15 of these rooms in that one big hangar. But no indication as to what the plan was for that. Again, none of this configuration appears on any master plan. So I know it is in the current draft master plan, but it's not in any existing master plan, the old master plan that's in existence at the moment. It has been cut and pasted into the master plan that's being undertaken at the moment, but it doesn't exist in any existing current master plan. So again, I think it's out of character with the current airport. It's a two times increase in the number of hangar space that they're proposing, and it extends the runway by about 1,500 feet north, of the last building on that on that airport space at the moment. So it's almost a third of a mile. The partial findings mechanism, which is the mechanism that the hearing was about, it just makes it impossible for us to litigate, meaning in broad terms, whether that's a good or a bad proposal. We just haven't got enough information. And I think, Brian, you can attest that the primary use of a partial findings is when a developer wishes to get an early read on one specific or two specific conditions out of the 10. So they feel like they're at risk on 2 of the 10, so they'll go for a partial findings on the 2 most controversial parts of the 10. That's the normal. That's the reason these partial findings hearings exist. So this is, that's not the case here. This is just because they don't have a plan, and so they wish us to opine on it, but they haven't given us any information. I've provided more information here to you tonight than they provided on Friday. So what would I ask the town to do? To review the Act 250 materials first and foremost. We hope that you would support a request that V-Trans stop this costly exercise, this master permitting exercise, and submit a full application, at this time, so that we can honestly adjudicate what its merits are. Or they could wait until they found a developer willing to do this, and then the developer, rather like we saw with the childcare earlier on, form a fully formed plan before they go to permitting. And back in March, Brian, you gave a commitment, or you set out that you had spoken to the Secretary, Flynn, thank you, Secretary Flynn, that you would require a hearing about the master plan before any permitting was begun. That was set at a March meeting. So, but that horse is out of the barn. The permitting, this Act 250 has already begun. This isn't even in the master plan yet, in an approved master plan, and yet they're going for they're starting the permitting process right now. So I'm going to. That's it about the Act 250. It was a well-attended and I think a good meeting. I'm glad we had that meeting, but I think it was shocking how little of a plan they actually had to present. On the airport master plan, not to be confused with the master permitting, which I've just talked about, the airport master plan, we've submitted individual questions, like I said, and we haven't received any response. It's going to be August the 30th until we get something, I'm sure. Again, similar issues with the master plan. Again, this is a non-exhaustive list, a non-manner exhaustive list, lack of data. The data presented has no sourcing or is internally inconsistent if you read the master plan. The hangar plan has been just cut and paste into the from the master permitting, cut and paste into the master plan without any due diligence on whether this is good, bad, or indifferent, whether this should be here, whether it should be here, whether there are other alternatives, what the demand is. All those questions should have been asked at the master plan stage, but they've gone straight to master permitting without any due diligence. So it's not like the master plan is driving this. This is driving the master plan, which is, I think, the wrong way around. The lighting plan in the master plan is not developed, nor are the implications of the number of flights, the timing of flights. None of that is in there. So we hear from Nick that the lighting's it's meaningless. It's not going to make a difference. That's his opinion, but it's not. There's nothing in the current master plan that shows that it won't make a difference. The runway extension to 5,000 feet. Again, I think Nick and others have said that is just not going to happen. That is still referenced in the master plan. It's still in there. It's still in the Vermont Aviation System Plan, which is the system-wide plan that was done last year. It's still in there, a desire to move to extend this runway in Middlebury to 5,000 feet. It's about 3,200 feet right now. So if it is not on the current agenda of VTrans, then specifically state that and just get it out of the plan and just say it's never going to happen. But no, it's still in there, and they're still caveating that 5,000 feet runway, which would be significant. Finally, the last point is the impact on the aquifer. Again, I've heard nothing to see here. We don't know that. It would be nice for the town to actually take some time to actually understand what the implications are for developing above the aquifer, rather than just assuming that it's not going to have an environmental impact and there's nothing to see. So again, the environmental impact statement of this development or the master plan has not been forthcoming, and that's together with the airport layout plan is yet to be seen by us. So that's why we don't have a position statement today. So,
okay.
Any questions?
Questions of Andy?
I just want to give you an example. If anybody has seen my store, 10,000 square feet, so this is going to be much larger than my store.
1.5 times.
Almost, yeah.
Just one of the hangars.
I'm talking about the big hangar.
Yeah. Yeah, so in total, it's 46,000 square feet, which is 4.5 times your shop then.
4.5?
Well, you got 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's 46.
So they're proposing 46,000.
No, that one hangar you're talking about. Oh,
Well, the one hangar, yeah, but in total, creating 46,000 square feet. Just to give you some indication, sorry, just one more data point, that's enough for 39 aircraft. There are 42 aircraft that are registered in Addison County, of which 13 are based out of Middlebury Airport, which already has hangars. So we're talking about a completely out of scale proposal of an expansion that is out of,
I have a question.
Let me just clarify before you ask your question. So this isn't, they're not expanding if nobody builds it. So you know as well as anybody, so let's make sure that the rest of the board understands. What they're doing is they're saying, if somebody wants one, this is where it would go. And some of the clarification I was able to get before, having to go away on family not vacation, family need, was that the state does not build hangars. They don't have the money, and that's not the way they do it. They lease the land, because there was a letter from Louise Prescott that made the rounds to every legislator in the state, I think. So I wanted to talk to him and just clarify and say, because that wasn't what I understood, and they validated that it's based upon pilots or businesses or whatever having a need for hangar space at the airport. They then would say, okay, you've got a design, and I'd kind of like that space. Then they lease that space subject to permitting, which is both the town DRB permitting. They would have to, because it's a private building that would be getting constructed, so it would have to go through Jen's DRB.
Or our office administratively, it may not be the actual DRB. But more importantly, it'll also go back in front of Act 250.
But then it would go through, and it would go to Act 250 at the same time, and so the Act 250, what the state is telling me that they're looking for is really the environmental impact. And so I've understood that they're going for, this is kind of like the max build out, and what would the environmental impact of that be? And we want to, because that's one of the biggest impacts is the environment. And would that be potentially acceptable use? Now, let's say this big one, say some manufacturer comes in and says they want to locate in Middlebury and they want to build that hangar. Now you've got a utilization, and they would go back through Act 250, and if that utilization exceeds whatever the environmental constraints are, then whether that's noise or pollutants going into the groundwater, and so I've not understood. I guess theoretically the state, because this is as a directive from the legislators, and I'm not sure. I guess I get it in that pre-permitting can shortcut the permitting process, but they still have to go through the permitting, and the amount of
but they're not going through the permitting, that's the point. They're not doing the permitting, that's the point.
They're doing the environmental portion of it.
They're not.
They told me that they were.
They're doing a partial findings hearing, which means that they don't. If they were going fully fledged through Act 250, we wouldn't have a problem. Then we didn't know at least what the plan was, and then we could say.
They don't have a plan because they don't have a tenant. I mean, I think, Andy, those are all subject to a tenant and whatever the plan of that tenant is.
So wait until you have a tenant then.
Because they don't have a tenant, they can't do, that's why where I was headed is I'm not sure I understand exactly why they're doing this master permitting, but that was at the directive of the state legislators. And, we have a couple of them that are against it, but at the same time, they signed on. I mean, that was voted at the State House, and so.
If you read the language though, Brian, it doesn't say anything about hangar master permitting. It says about permitting around development around the airport. It didn't say permit just hangars, which they've interpreted it as just, so they've gone out nine airports and they've just filled the airports with boxes, but nothing more than boxes, so we don't know what's going to be in those boxes. So you cannot evaluate most of the 10 criteria I can't sit here and say, well, noise is not an issue or wildlife's not an issue, because we don't know what's going on there. It's just a box on a map.
Right.
So that's just unfair, because there is a possibility that, someone, they get a tenant for this one here, right? So that goes to Act 250, and Act 250 either administratively or just has a hearing and it
I can
says.
guarantee you that there is never gonna be an administrative one at the airport out here again. Before my time, they tried to do an administrative one, and it blew up. And so
They just did one, Brian. They just did two at the airport, Act 250, two hangars got, nothing, not as part of this process, but
No.
they went through Act 250.
Yeah.
And there was not a hearing. There was not a hearing because I didn't get.
Those were in the master plan that was approved previously.
I think when Andy hears the word administratively, he thinks you're talking about me issuing a permit versus sending it in front of the DRB. I think when Brian is saying administratively, he's talking about the Act 250 end of it.
I'm talking about Act 250. So there's two hangars, two new hangars that were built at the, you permitted them, but they went through Act 250 individually, administratively, without a hearing. That's the fear here, that that will go through administratively, that will, and nobody will look at the whole thing. And then suddenly, before we know it, we're at the big hangar, and nobody's said, stop, we're gonna take a look at this whole thing. I think this should go before the DRB now. I think that's because it is an adjustment to a planned urban development.
We've already dealt with the state, and the state's plans don't come before the DRB.
That's not true, is it?
That's too weirdy. I can't really answer that. That's too speculative. I don't really, there could be a lot of situations where it did.
Okay, so we got your point, and I understand it, but at the
Well,
same.
it can't be true, because Brian, when the runway was extended, that went before the DRB. So it's not that, it's not true to say that anything on state land doesn't go before the DRB, because the extension of the runway absolutely went through the DRB.
And then the DRB's conclusion at the end of that decision was that it was outside their jurisdiction because it fell under the FAA rules, because it was a health and safety matter, which this is not, so they're not.
No, I'm talking about the extension of the runway, not the cutting of the trees, Jennifer.
I am too. The extension of the runway was a health and safety thing. They were filling in potholes and making it safer. So because it had a safety component to it, it was technically exempt from DRB review, and that's what they concluded at the end of their decision.
Well, okay, that's not how I was reading it.
But I got it.
Okay.
So, I have not stopped talking to him, but at the same time,
But we hear a lot of talk, Brian, and that's the problem. We hear that both Nick and yourself, you suggested that somehow this was all negotiable.
well,
We've run out
so
of time on that.
I know, I tried to negotiate the big hangar. We looked at the other end of the runway. The other end of the runway's got ledge, and there's no area to put the access road. And so, do I believe that anybody will come and take that hangar? I have no idea.
But they might.
But they might, okay? And at that
And
point,
it still
at that
impacts-
point,
the fact that they
you have an
might,
Act 250 and you have a DRB.
The fact that they might has already impacted potentially all our house values, right? The fact that we will disclose this will be public information, it is public information. So the damage is already done, right, on the home prices on this.
If that's what we're talking about as a house value, that's different than talking about whether the hangar makes sense or not.
But it's a non-issue to just say that they might not happen, or it could happen, or it's just a paperwork
Well, I
exercise.
expected you were gonna live there till the day you died, so it's a different scenario versus if you're looking at your house value, if that's the big concern. If the concern is whether you're gonna actually have the hangar there and have that impact your view shed, that's different than whether that you're concerned
Brian,
about.
let's be clear. What I was responding to was your comment that this is, this could potentially just be a paperwork exercise, and that you don't expect any of this to be done.
Well, I said, I fully expect there will be some more hangars there.
Yeah.
Because I hear from the pilots that they would like to be able to put a hangar up, but these are for private, they're not putting up a 100 by 100 hangar. or whatever.
Right, so why don't you let the pilots go through the process, and two of them have done it, back in where the main airport is, and they've already got approval, and it's got permitting, and it went through Act 250, and they've already built one of them. So we don't have a problem with pilots, because then they get to put it where they need it. It's this just general putting boxes on pieces of paper that is very harmful, because there is a possibility that administratively one or two of these could get built, and then before you know it, we have a big development here without fully understanding. And that's the trick of the partial hearings. That's the danger of what's happening right now, because they haven't been fair to us and provided the full information about what is going into each one of these hangars. So we can't possibly comment against any of these 10 conditions, right?
I don't disagree with you on some of these things, but they can't possibly tell you what's going into those hangars without a tenant. I mean, it's a catch-22.
So wait until they have a tenant.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
Go speak to the legislators.
But would you support writing that letter that you just said you supported me on as part of this?
That ship sailed. No, I wouldn't support you, Andy. I do support that if they bring something that we don't like for our community, I'll be there going to battle with you. And does it mean that we're going to absolutely align the entire time? There's no guarantee on that. But everything I'm finding is that this does not circumvent, when we know what's going in there, that it's going to go back through the entire process. And so I'm not sure what they're gaining in that. Mike?
Yeah, I just got one question, and this would be a...
Mike, do you want to come up?
Yeah, you probably should. No one at home can hear you.
Everybody can hear me.
No, they can't.
Come on out, Mike.
Absolutely not.
Okay. As the chairman of this, and you're on the Act 250 thing, so
I'm not on the Act 250 of this.
I know you're not, but I'm just want to get some information from you. So, their consultant gave he gave his spiel at this Act 250 thing, and they're seeking positive findings of the following Act 250 criteria.
Which criteria were they looking at, Mike?
10. All of them.
All
All of them except 7. So my question to you is... Yeah, 4. 4, all but 4 and 7.
7 is up there.
Okay, all but 4. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it right here. I got the board. So, say, okay, just for giggles here, the Act 250 board gives them positive findings on the 9 criteria that they have there on this proposed nothing development over at the airport. I mean, there's nothing, nobody knows what's going in there other than, 1 big hangar, 3 medium hangars, and whatever it is, 4 little ones. So they give them positive findings on those. And then 5 years down the road, the state, a developer comes to them and says, hey, listen, I want to put my manufacturing facility in there. And their consultant, the state's consultant, came up with that 120 by 120 and put in the parking specifically for a manufacturing or a commercial facility there, not an independent airplane owner.
No, that's specifically for a business.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they come in there, they found someone, a developer comes, and they come before Act 250, and they got to do their deal. And they come in, and I'm the developer, okay? I come in, and you tell me, you or somebody else says, no, you can't satisfy the number 2 criteria. I'm going to tell you that the criteria was passed 5 years prior to that for that development. See, that's what I'm worried about.
That's a good question. I don't know, Mike. I have to ask that.
I mean, you don't have to be a genius to try to figure this out, what's happening here. The state, they're not breaking even on any of the airports outside of probably maybe Rutland,
So one of the ways for them to get revenue
Bring
is with
business in.
business or hangars, okay? And what you gotta realize, at least I gotta realize, I've understood, that aviation community is very, 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 very small. There's only 942 planes registered in the state of Vermont. And every owner of a plane has to register his plane every year through FAA. So there's only 942 made for the state of Vermont. I think for New England states, there's 8,000. That's a really small community. You take a radius, the middle of the airport, if you can picture this, Munson Road on the north, okay, 125 on the south, on the west, 116, and on the east, Schoolhouse Road. There's 200 residential properties there, just in that little area. That's basically a 1 mile radius. The service, there's not even 42 planes at that airport now.
13.
There's 13. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this Act 250 thing, they're seeking this stuff to try to make it easier. I'm subsidizing it. You're all subsidizing this consultant. God, I don't know how much this damn consultant's making to go through this thing. So possibly, and I don't know this, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that if someone comes 5 years from now, goes in, and they can't pass the third criteria, but it was passed 5 years previous by the state of Vermont, I'm kind of thinking that Act 250 board's gonna, they're gonna say, well, you know, we did it 5 years ago, you know, what's wrong now? So that's what we're worried about.
No, I get that question, and I have to ask how that works, because part of those criteria is knowing what's going in there, and you know, what kind of waste are they going to generate, what kind of car count, what's their noise, how many children are they bringing to that next area of the community?
Right.
There's a lot of things that play in there, and so a preliminary finding, I don't see that trumping the real data when there is a particular, but I don't know. I guess I'll ask that question.
Kind of, yeah. It shouldn't, let's put it that way. One would think it shouldn't, but if it's already there,
And if it's in the master.
it's going to be in the back of their mind. And as far as I'm concerned, the way to kind of stop that is to just say, no, you know, don't come before us with an Act 250 permit until you got all the, you know? As Robert Zimmerman famously said in one of his songs.
The Times?
You wasted my precious time, you know, don't waste my precious time. So, yeah, so that's about it. But just to let you know, they're asking for a lot of approval on.
I'm disappointed I wasn't able to hear what they were particularly asking for, because I had to unplug. So that was my opportunity to hear.
There will be a recording, I think, in 2 weeks.
Okay. Jen?
I was just gonna say that we encounter similar confusion sometimes with the DRB, because sometimes with a big property, they'll do a PUD and they'll create different lots in this commercial subdivision, and that enables them to kind of encourage developers to come and purchase a lot, but then they'll have to go back through for a re-review while they fine-tune all the details. So Andy has a pretty good point about it not being done like too administratively, you know, that they really like give it a second review. Maybe that could be a condition you could suggest or something.
Jennifer, can you just explain why this wouldn't be in front of as it is currently now, why that is not in front of the DRB right now as it is? Because it's a planned adjustment to a PUD.
I'm not able or willing to answer that question here tonight. I'm not trying to be obstructive. I just haven't really thought through it like that. I learned a lot at that meeting. I learned a lot from your summary memo, so I'm still coming up to speed here. The other concern that I had from attending that meeting was that I heard Josh entering MANA as an interested party, but not necessarily individuals. And so I'm worried that if he enters Mana, then the notices will go to Mana or some Mana representative and may not go to all the different neighbors. So we might just want to check and make sure that he has a full distribution list of Mana's ever-changing membership, or there's a Mana person who's willing to do the distribution on their end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're still making the same errors.
I didn't know anything.
No, so there's a neighbor, adjoining neighbor, and he didn't get a notice. So something needs to, that issue.
Does your property abut the airport?
What's that? I'm on Airport Road.
Do you physically abut airport, state-owned, state? Does your property,
borders connect to the airport?
Is my border connected to the airport? No, I'm on the road.
So
And I'm
that's
here
what
to
he's
address the access road.
yeah, then you would not get, I don't think you would get a direct mail-in. You might, but I
I've
don't
been
think.
complaining for eight years now, and nobody has pointed me in the right direction until just recently.
Sorry.
At the hearing, people entered an appearance and became interested parties, and Mana became.
But how do you do that if you don't get notice?
Well, I don't know about that, but like.
Well, it was posted in, they have posting sites, I mean, it's like us, we do our notice in the Addison Independent, and if you don't read the notifications every week, you may not know about it, but we're, like,
But Brian, we had this issue 3 months ago, and you said that you were going to sort this out.
okay.
It's not been
Don't-
sorted.
Well, I'm a little perturbed that you knew the 3 people who didn't, you wouldn't disclose the names of those so we could make sure they were notified. There you go.
It's-
You did the work, you knew exactly who had not been notified so we could make sure they get on the list. But because you wanted to be able to come here tonight and call it out, Andy, you were not willing to give us the name. That's petty, I don't like that.
Okay. We gave you the
So
names.
don't go there with me, please.
We gave you the names three months ago. Back in March, they're the same 3 people.
I promised that I would do my best. I didn't say I have the time to go and knock on every door. You obviously had the time. Give us the data. If you want us to help you, instead of trying to make us look bad, then give us the information. That was pretty bad.
It's not your responsibility.
No, it is.
It's V-Trans.
Well, then don't come here and say you made a promise to me. You just said that. You said you were going to make sure they get noticed.
We gave you the names. We gave V-Trans. We gave Josh the names 3 months ago.
Please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Christie. And to address what you shared about your concern with Mana, I did raise my hand at the meeting and asked to be that representative for the Mana party. I'm not sure that we're situated in a way that can be a party, so I'll look into that, because I'm not sure we have what we need. When I saw the notice, I said the person who showed me, the abutting owner who showed me the notice had my name next to a section of it to be a registered party, and it showed some criterion that we don't have, that I wasn't familiar with, so I'll look into that. I really wanted to say thank you. So of a different tone, kind of big picture, because I don't have the command of details the way other people do. But I really appreciate that this board is looking at the airport, and Brian, that you have gone to such an extent to make sure that the board is involved. The reason that I really, really appreciate that is that, I'll say Mana, but it's really the number of people that live, as Andy was saying, adjacent or close to the airport, including the historic village of East Middlebury. They're all affected by the airport and the activity, the noise, the amount of flights, happening during sleeping hours versus waking hours. We're all susceptible to that. And so while we don't know exactly how many people
are affected in a way that bothers them. I just know that I've heard that there are other people in the community, and they're thankful that a few people are standing up and doing the work. And so, who am I? I know I'm getting to know you all, but some of my background, which is relevant, is, well, one thing is that I'm the replacement for Prem Prakash on the communication group that you set up, Brian, between the Select Board, V-Trans, and MANA. And so that's who I am. I do not, and I never ever will, or nor hope to, have the skills that Prem Prakash has. But I come to the position with an open heart, with an interest in good communication and transparency, and bringing my strengths for what that's worth.
Are you still having the meetings, Ann?
Yep. Yeah, our next meeting is August 31st, and it's during the daytime, and it's at the airport. Michelle's coming in, Dan DeLubriere is coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're getting them to Kathleen, and she's posting them on our
Yep.
on our web.
Yep. Michelle has done a beautiful job of coming to those meetings with an agenda that we follow, and being sure to take input. And then she does another beautiful job of typing all of that up, and she sends the draft to everyone who is at the meeting so that they can enter any changes that they see. And when she finalizes it, she sends it to everyone at the meeting and to Kathleen. I send it to all the MANA folks, and, you know, Kathleen puts it on the website. So that's what's happening.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, yeah. Just to keep going, because we're all done with being here tonight, I'm sure, in ways. I wanted to mention some of the history of MANA, because I've been involved since the beginning, and it's relevant to today. Karen and Don Glauber, who lived off of Burnham Drive, they started the group going back a few years ago at the time of the Runway Extension, and the reason they started it was because they had concern about the extension, and they were hearing mixed messages from V-Trans. And V-Trans is working very hard right now to no longer be giving mixed messages. What ended up happening that I can see now, looking back, is that it ended up, you know, we were put aside, and the runway extension was for safety reasons. So, of course, we all want safety for our pilots and the aircraft. So it went through. And what I've learned now is that because it's there, see, any plane can land at the Middlebury Airport if they feel they can do it safely. And so now there are larger planes that feel they can land safely who are flying in and out of the airport. So that's more traffic up overhead, it's of a different nature, it's no longer this Sunday, you know, the little plane flying around, and the noise is different. And we know that we've had helicopters coming in, and they can be right next to houses and not know there are houses there. So the place that this is relevant is my appreciation for you making this time tonight during this meeting. And that is that the group of residents that are near the airport that do bear the effect of the airport and the increased traffic and helicopters and larger planes, it's really important to us that the Select Board represent them and their interest, which is basically, we don't have a mission statement, but basically around noise, the visual, vibration, activity, and wildlife. You know, these are our basic concerns. And so it's real important to me, sitting here, that the select board represent these views in addition to the other views that you're required to represent. You know, the business owners in Middlebury, the other community members in Middlebury who don't live at the airport, the people who live around the airport and are not bothered. So all of us. So it's like a multi-legged stool. And I just thank you for giving us the leg.
Thanks, Ann, for picking up Prem's role. That's, for me, the communication part is the only way we're going to keep everybody informed out there. And that, you know, even to notifying people, getting that into those minutes and making sure that that's posted and everybody knows where, if they ever have a question, that they're looking at those and seeing what's going on. How many people are on your email, the MANA email now?
I have, I think it was 22, and it's going to go up to 24.
Is there a way that they can submit their email to get involved on that, or? Like, let's say you have, because there's two, Mike was just saying there's a couple hundred, Jason's saying he doesn't get any information. I don't know, is Jason on the email?
I reached out because I was given their names, but I touched base with them, and then, you know, they addressed my concerns, and so.
Yeah, I just, to keep people informed, it would be nice to have the larger community out there on that, so that it's representing everybody out there, but not just representing, but informing them, so everybody knows.
I am open to your ideas of how to do that.
I will think about that. But
Yeah, no, seriously.
Just wondering if you'd already created one. If not, then I think we should.
Well, what I had done in the past, well, we've got Kathleen with the town, and in the past, a piece of the puzzle that I have worked on through the years is a noise complaint chain. You know, when residents
Yeah.
are bothered, who do they call?
Well, and that now, because we have this contact, it should come through you and immediately go, you know, so I used to command the support brigade that had the aviation. So whenever there was a helicopter incident out there, I would get the people who knew me would call me, and I would call up my unit, and I would say, hey, can you move, you know, to the other side of the airfield? And Eugene's very familiar with that. And I found out about it, and I had him working off the other end of the airfield. And so most of those helicopters out there are military helicopters, and they use, it's very convenient for a lot of training, and it's also where we've done a lot of support during different needs for support. So, but we need those communication channels, because they're very easy to fix when people that are in the position to know, to make those changes, know about it. But if it doesn't get to the right people, nothing happens.
Kathleen, that communication chain, I know you had put on the town website. Do you know offhand if it's still there?
I would have to check.
Okay, and I am in the process of updating, well, I did start updating it, so let me update that with you, Kathleen.
Can someone like Jason, if he wants to be on this notices if he wants to get those notices from the state, can he request to be on it?
Well,
if he's not getting automatic.
MANA puts it out. So they have the meeting, and then MANA puts out what happened. And so my question is how do they get onto the MANA thing without having to go on and read what, because MANA submits it to the town as well, and it gets posted on the town. But you're also submitting to all of the MANA people your notes, right?
Yeah, the notes from the
Yeah.
meetings.
But I'm talking about the notices that state sends out to us, like me and Andy. He doesn't get it because he doesn't have
Well,
meeting, I didn't know about it.
my point is MANA should be doing that. That's why we created this, because you know what's going on. It should be,
I mean,
Yeah, because there are required notifications and they're not required. We're trying to create,
The tax space, like in the Office of Taxes, isn't that where your address is?
I'm sorry?
Would your address be in the tax office? Is that why, like, the Prescott's, their
We,
name?
we went through, we went through some of that, well, we just, the base didn't get updated during, COVID, but I thought we just got it updated, Kathleen, didn't we?
We did.
So,
It's basic town information. I think it just has to be updated and, you know, I don't think we need 3 different people holding different emails and addresses and all of that.
no,
It seems like it should be a town-generated thing based on.
well, they have access to, when they come in for a budding property owners list, do they come to you or do they go online?
Engineers for stormwater permits and things go
Yep.
online. I've never talked to anyone.
And what's
from
that online data that, remind me?
Well, all of our grand list data, Kathleen, help me.
Yes, is available online.
Okay.
And
So is that where they get it from?
That's where they're supposed to be pulling it from.
There's the A&R resource, the map. So that's how I got to know there were 3 abutters that weren't. It just took me 30 minutes to go around the property, and you just click in, and it gives you the abutting, the homeowner.
I don't
So it's 30 minutes time that V-Trans could have paid the consultant to do, and it would have been correct.
Well,
So that's a
It's
consultant thing.
not, they don't need to come to the town, I guess is the point. V-Trans could just use the A&R map. And it would.
well, they all, typically they all pull from the same database when they're doing these permits, I'm pretty sure.
I think they cut and paste old notices, I think that's where the error comes.
That's possible. Yeah.
But we did inform them back in March, the missing properties, and it's still the same missing properties. I guess that's why I'm frustrated.
No, go ahead, Ann. I just want to finish my point. Thank you for, and we can be in touch later about more avenues for reaching folks, whether it's, just anyway. The other piece I wanted to share was, I was at the Act 250 site visit and the hearing, and I took a photograph of the criterion. And Brian, you may know more about this, but the big picture to me is the location that's being proposed. When you look at the whole airport, to put this biggest, ugliest beast of a building right dab in front of a person's house, site, their view, isn't there somewhere else in the airport that would take into account the aesthetics? It's what MANA is wanting is a two-way. Information 2 ways, where yes, we're being asked to tolerate the noise of the planes and all the other things. Well, let's have V-Trans also show the consideration of being aware of the neighbors. So that's just, to keep in mind. So that was my last thing.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Any questions of Ann? Jason?
Been trying to be patient. Thank you all for being patient. My main concern is everybody's looking at this big plan and what's going on at the airport. But what I'm concerned about is the access road to the airport. There's no yellow line. One hangar up there rents out to these people that build Subaru cars. They race up and down the road there. And it's been addressed by the cops. And he told me my only outlet was to come here and talk to you guys. So that's why I'm here. And then I talked to V-Trans. I'm not sure exactly who I talked to, but he pretty much told me on any safety measures on that road, to anything I was looking for, I could pretty much just hold my hand out for, because it's up to you guys, the town, to put stuff in there. There's no streetlights, there's no like I said, no center line. You guys widen Case Street, or Katy Road. Even the chief of police, Mr. Hanley, would like to see the road widened down through there. Some lights, speed bumps, some sort of safety measures for the people in the community there. I believe there's at least 12 houses down there. So it is a community of people down there. I happen to be 75 feet or less from the road because I bought the place and it was eased in, or however you guys do it. I'm a disabled Vermonter and I stay home all day to raise children and stuff. And I see my animals being hit. I see my kids, when we try to walk the dogs down the road on leashes, having to jump off the sides of the road because people aren't paying attention. I don't even dare to take my dogs out to walk them at nighttime because I've been hit, or almost hit multiple times. So, how long has the airport been there? Does anybody know? How long?
60s?
Since the 50s. So, I think maybe 40, well, that'd be 50, 60, 70 years that it's been there, and the only upgrade that's probably been in there is maybe it got paved. So, I'm asking you guys, I don't have any problems. The helicopters fly over, the military, I support the military. You know, I support the police, I support all the people at the airport, and whatever jobs that want to come in. I'm just asking for a safe access road. I know nowhere else to turn. I've complained to the people at the airport, and my power line was shot in front of my house with a high-powered rifle. So I don't want to complain to them people no more. I don't want to put the safety of my family in jeopardy. They came down and replaced the line. The bullet was shot directly over my house. Had it been a little bit lower, it probably would have struck my house. And I feel like, you know, the airport's in there and they're asking for all this stuff, but yet, when I ask them for some safety measures, they tell me to pack it, that it's up to you guys.
It is, it's a town road, I mean, if there's
You know?
improvements to be made, that's on.
And when I complained about the speeding, the only thing the town has done is increase the speed limit. It went from 25 to 35. Because when I complained about it, I was told that, oh, we labeled the road as the wrong criteria, so now we got to increase the speed. I kind of felt like it was like a retaliatory thing.
How fast do you think they're going out there?
70, 80 miles an hour. There's a Corvette that comes around the corner sideways, and it's just, whoa, all the way down to the road.
Comes out of the airport, by the way.
And there's a black one that's a local drug dealer, IROC, in the neighborhood, that comes through, you know, and he's racing up and down the road. Well, by the time you call the cops, everybody's so long gone, nothing ever happens.
Okay.
Ever.
Did you say one of the hangars is being used to?
The people that live down there by the antique store just south of B Supply are the ones that build them cars in that hangar. Because when I went out and talked to the guy about his employees that were racing up and down the road, he stated to me that he's the only employee. So they're not his employees, they're renting out hangar space to build Subarus and hot rod cars and race them up and down the road. My uncle just bought a place at the end of the street. Now he's debating on whether he's going to sell it because his dog's been put on anxiety meds, doesn't want to go outside. Every time they go up and down the road, the dog just pisses itself. You know, it's affecting the neighborhood there. So I'm just asking you guys if maybe in this whole permitting process and stuff, maybe there's something you can do to try to hold V-Trans or the airport or whoever, the town or whoever accountable.
Well, that's a town road there, so, but I think we,
But the
different
sheriff,
issues.
but the chief of police told me that when a business or something comes into town, in the permitting process, if there's safety that needs to be done to the roads,
Oh, that's something
they
different.
should be, you know, maybe that's part of the permitting work.
That would be if you were putting a business there.
But
which
we
is
don't
what
know if
Andy's
they're gonna with
talking
them
about.
hangars coming in. What if they do put in a business?
That's what Andy's talking about. Yeah.
Well, and they gave a number, they said it was gonna be 70 journeys a day. Don't know where they came up with that number, they just pulled that from that.
So at least if the access road is
But that,
upgraded
drives-
and
drives
place.
through like Jen, I mean, there's a lot of,
I know, I've been going to Jen and I've been going to Kathleen, and
Yeah.
everybody keeps pointing me here.
yeah.
So
no,
I'm
we-
just trying to find answers, because
But
I
I'm
go to
saying
her,
it-
she tells me to
it-
go to her, I go to her, she
They
says come
can't
to you.
change it today.
I know, but I've been doing this since
without-
2014.
I know. But
And-
no-
and
no-
I just
but
barely been
nobody's,
informed on
nobody's
where to go.
built a hangar with a business going in there. So we've got a speeding issue on that road. Laura, you got it for your next meeting? You taking notes?
Look at the rubber
Okay.
strips on the road, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
you know, I just live there and I'm thinking about selling my house. You know, because it's like, I live there and I get no help from
How
anybody.
wide is the road? Is it wide enough to be striped?
I don't know, I couldn't tell you, I don't know what the regulations are. I'm just a dumb citizen.
He said Jason said there's no center line. I'm just curious, is it wide enough to be striped?
Well, it's a town road, right? And there's one right up there where Coles used to be, on the end of this brand-new nice bridge. Road looks like crap, and it's not, and there's no center line there either.
So you're not talking about airport, you're talking about the one that runs.
I'm talking about Airport Road.
The airport road is.
The access road is not striped.
It's not access road, it's called airport road.
Well, airport, yeah, but it's the access to the
Road is
airport.
something that, that goes parallel to my
drive
driveway. That's different. Airport road is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's how they access the airport. There's no other way to access the airport. So it is an access road for the airport.
We don't stripe city streets.
If there was an outlet on the other end, it wouldn't be considered just the only access road for the airport.
The sun line is faded now.
I fear that if we widened it, that it would just increase the speeds. I think that would go against the traffic calming options.
Yeah, but that's something that
Okay.
the chief of police is calling for a safety measure.
Chief is the one that tells us that roads are designed for certain speeds, and when the road looks like it should be faster, and generally they drive faster, like South Street. And we have an incredible speeding problem all over this town. You're not the only neighborhood that's come in here and talked to us. It's just all over. I live on Halpin Road. It's a racetrack. So, it's
Yeah, I
very-
understand, but what I'm getting at is the airport is using the street I live on as the access road. They're not using your street for an access road. That's just a regular, whatever is considered for road. This is a town road that's also a state airport access road.
Okay.
Is it not? I mean, the sign on the end says State of Vermont Airport.
All our roads go.
So unless they fly from 116 into the airport, that's an access road.
It's true, but that's not a designation about responsibility. It's a town road, which we are
That's a
responsible.
dead end, I know, but every other neighborhood has lights in it or some sort, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Go to
No, it's-
Peterson Heights, go to Peterson Heights or any neighborhood. Okay, it's a neighborhood out there.
I'm not denying it's a neighborhood, I'm
There should be
saying
speed
that
bumps.
we don't
Every,
have
you go up to
lights.
Burlington, you go to get into the airport on the access road, there's speed bumps.
Speed bumps make plowing really difficult. There's
Yeah, but
always trade-offs
there's
on these
ways
things.
around that. Public safety should outweigh a hazard of plowing over a snowball or a bump.
Sure.
If I pay for them, can I put a speed bump in?
Not on a town road.
Okay, so I'm asking somewheres for some help.
Okay.
The chief is also doing a study down there on the road.
It's 5 minutes to
I
10,
know,
we
and
got
I've
more
waited,
stuff, so
and
we're
I've
actually.
waited for 3 hours there.
I know.
So can you point me in the right direction to
No,
figure out
it's right
what I
here.
need to do?
It's right here. We're gonna talk about it, and we're referring this to our public
The more
safety.
traffic, the more they expand, the more traffic that's coming in.
Well, that isn't happening tomorrow, but
No, but it is happening.
I get it.
So I just want to make sure in this big plan that there's something set in
Well,
stone.
you have an issue now that we need to deal with that cannot wait and be contingent upon something that's going on years in the future, so.
But it's going on now. It's been going on since 2014.
No, you're not following me, Jason. I'm saying you have a speeding problem now we need to address.
Okay, thank you.
It's different from.
So I want to know how you guys are going to address it. Can you put down, can you put down one of them, the chief of police suggested one of the ones that takes pictures of people? Because if you put one there that just flashes, he said nobody's going to slow down for it. nothing's gonna be done, and it's gonna be a waste of your guys' money.
Okay.
If somebody gets killed down there, then it's just gonna be, yes, a lawsuit. Well, it's true. There's not even a center line on a town road.
I don't have a center line on my road either,
Is it dirt or is it tar?
both.
Eugene?
I don't have a center line on my road. I live on a dead end in
Well,
town.
yeah, right. But even still, it should be the town's responsibility on any town road to have a yellow line. There's not one right up here in the middle of town. There's no lines. Right in front of the old Cole's Flower place. The road looks like crap. There's no center lines. And that's a highly used road.
So I'm gonna move on, unless, did you have something critical, Eugene?
I can save it if we're gonna have a meeting like we said at the beginning, where, you know.
There's not gonna be one that's just airport.
Well,
But we will put it on our agenda again, that, because we meet every 2 weeks, and when they get to, we'll have one that's the master plan, but that's the state's meeting. But they will come back and give us, that's just airport, but that's a master plan meeting. That they will present the final version to the board and the community, and just like we had the first one. I would like to see them do it a lot better and not do this piecemeal. I think they need to present the whole thing and then take questions. That meeting was so disjointed, I had a hard time following, and I never got the full presentation. I had to go and watch the video because I had a commitment. I mean, at least people should be able to come and see the presentation and then go into the question and answer period. But that's a lesson learned from that. And Jason, we're moving
I just
on.
want to know what meeting I can come back to address when it is going to be about the access road and part of the whole.
There is not a meeting on the access road. The access, the
So can I gather
airport,
petitions? I can get, what, 2% of the population in Middlebury to come in here and petition you guys to have the access road upgraded? Is that correct? Only gonna have 2% of the,
well, then it have to be voted on at town meeting. We have a prioritization that we go through. It goes to the infrastructure committee as far as how we maintain the roads.
no, I'm asking you how, yeah.
Have you been
I
to-
wanna know how to get it in
Go.
front of you guys with enough people in Middlebury to get it on the agenda. What do I gotta do?
Well,
So this problem's been, you know.
'Cause
brought
I'll walk
before-
around, I'll walk around all day long and get
So the
it done.
problem's been brought before the infrastructure committee several times. A lot of people, just
But
like
I
you.
wasn't informed,
A lot of people
ever.
just don't know the infrastructure committee meets on a regular basis, and people have been coming to the infrastructure committee who live in neighborhoods just like you with problems similar to yours. And so one of the things we're trying to do to address that is a bike ped plan, where we can have a list of all the different projects that people are bringing forth. So you'll see a survey on Front Porch Forum. I mean, I'll make sure I get your email before you go, so that I can let you know when that survey's happening.
But is
It's a
that,
longer process than you have in your mind, but.
I don't care,
It would be to
I've
get
already
you on
been
a- It would be to
8
get
years.
that on a list of problem areas that people have complained about, so that the infrastructure committee can take a more early approach to it.
What can I petition then?
You
Yeah.
could, and it would cause all kind of mayhem, but I don't think it would get you any closer to what you need, because
What if I get
it
2%?
doesn't hurt you.
If I get 2% of the vote though, yeah, I can bring it to you guys.
That's for the town meeting
5%.
warning, and I think it's 5. Is it?
5%? So how many signatures? could I have?
5%, but it doesn't get you any more than what you've already done. It's now on, it's on our radar now as
Yeah,
a,
but it's for speeding, not for upgrading the access road.
You came in front of us, right, and you brought up all these issues.
Right.
It's on, like Brian said, this is on our radar now. We'll talk about it, but we cannot answer everything at this meeting, that we're gonna do rumble strips, or we can do this.
So then who can
This
I
is something
talk-
that we have to work
So I
on.
need to figure out who I can talk to.
Pardon me?
Fahad.
You already talked to us.
Yeah.
You are the one you talked to. And we already said, you are on the radar
But you're
now.
addressing it for speeding,
well,
not for the access road. That's what he said.
But you're talking about speeding on the access road.
Yeah,
being an
no, I'm
issue.
talking about making the access road up to date with the airport.
Oh, you wanna know when the Act 250 meeting is, where you can bring this concern
Yeah,
forward?
that's what I've been getting at, because I haven't been told about any Act 250 meeting, nothing. I wanna go somewhere where I can make my voice heard on
The
what,
access.
the
You can
access
s-
road needs to be upgraded to the airport standards.
You can submit that in written, good night, in written testimony. They had the meeting, the hearing the other day, but you can submit in written testimony. I don't know if you're in a butter but you still can submit and as for consideration and they'll hear it. But as far as wanting to hold any development at the airport accountable to that, that's when it goes through the DRB process. And that's when, sometime in the future, because that's what happened with like Tractor Supply. You know, when they were going through the final review process, that's when they said you need a turn lane.
Okay.
So,
I'm sorry to be confused, I'm just, I'm not used to all this, and maybe I'm a little bit more simple than some of you guys, so that's why I asked a little bit more questions.
yeah.
So you're telling me that I should be going to that whatever DR or whatever B meeting?
Well, that meeting won't happen until such a time as there's actually a property going into the airport.
Okay.
But yeah, when you hear that there's rumors that somebody's gonna build a big hangar or
I've already heard that.
what's that?
I've already heard that in the big plan.
Well,
That's why I'm addressing it.
yeah, it's not happening right now, so.
So we have 3 people with their hands up online.
Okay.
We have Louise Prescott.
Okay.
Louise? Louise, are you with us? Louise, we're gonna move on. Paula Nath.
Hi, Paula.
Can you hear me?
We do.
Okay, thank you for your time. It's late, and I appreciate everybody is probably pretty exhausted. So I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, appreciate for the time. My property abuts the southern end of the runway, so I'm certainly an interested party in this. I just want to comment that I was at that 250 site visit. And it was interesting because I'm handicapped, so I couldn't walk out the whole field, which gave me a really interesting perspective from where I was standing to see where everybody was standing in this field about what this would entail, these proposed permits. And I was looking at the size of the footprint that would be happening if this was going to happen. And that footprint was going to affect so many of the 13 criteria that have to do with the Act 250 and environment, endangered species, noise, and several other criteria. I'm not going into them. I think everybody knows what these criteria are. But in terms of the footprint, and therefore the aesthetic, not just for those in this neighborhood, but the entire Middlebury community, whether it's the aquifer, whether it's whatever happens, property values, because property taxes go into Middlebury. And so I was so struck about the visual of what would happen if any of these permits were to come to be. So Anne had asked for the support of the select board in understanding that what happens here, I'm getting this weird feedback, I don't know if you are, but what happens out here in East Middlebury will happen in Middlebury. And the very clear thing to me is, if you build it, they're asking for permits potentially. If if you build it, they will come. And I'm really urging the select board to remember we're all part of that same community, and what affects us here is going to affect the town as well. So thank you for your time. Everybody's tired, and I appreciate you giving me this time. And I hope the support for our neighborhood out here at the airport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Can anybody respond to what I said? Is that fair to ask you that?
Well, I don't see that the airport community is not getting support from the board, and I think we're all concerned to make sure that we develop the situation and know what's going on. This is, I think Andy has pointed out quite well, that it's a challenging situation asking for permits when you don't even have any idea what's going in. So I don't know if you're looking for something specific, Paula?
No, sometimes when one is talking to a group of people, especially when you're not in front of them, you'd like to hear what input or impact whatever you said.
Yeah.
And it's not asking you what you're gonna do, it's like, hey, how did you hear what I said? So I feel like I'm not talking to a vacuum.
Yeah, well, if, I heard that you're looking to make sure that we understand you're a part of our community, and that you're hoping that we're taking that into consideration, and I don't see, given the amount of time that we've spent on this issue over the last 6 months, that anybody out there could think that we don't. There is not one part of our community we have talked any more to than the airport community, and so and I have spent a lot of time talking with the state and talking with different people to try to find out and develop the situation, and so.
That's appreciated, Brian, and so is your comment back. I appreciate it. And there was nothing I meant to be accusational. It was supportive and appreciative, and it was more to communicate back and forth.
Yeah.
So I heard your response, and it was more like a dialogue. That's all.
Okay, I think the rest of the board is of like mind, but they're getting tired.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Somebody say hello to you guys.
I hear that.
Hello to you.
Is that you, Louise?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear now.
Oh, thank heavens. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Paula. I was just trying to get my thing to work, so I'll let Paula finish.
Okay, Paula.
No, I'm finished.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Go ahead, Lee.
Have a good night now.
That was kind of strange. Sorry to bust in like that. Hi, I'm Louise Prescott, and I think maybe you know my name. And I am an abutting landowner. I am probably one of the people Andy was talking about. I have never received any notices for anything, even though we've lived here for a little over 2 years. And I am finding that living next to the airport and trying to keep up with what's going on there is becoming a full-time job. It's exhausting. And I'm just trying to figure out, I know there's a master plan, and I know there are Act 250 plans, and I went to a meeting on Friday and was kind of appalled at what I heard. But it almost seems like maybe there's some kind of bigger something behind all of this that I don't know what's going on, but I know we had what started out as tree trimming and became a clear cut, and they filled in a wetland, and all of a sudden they didn't have to worry about spraying herbicides on fence line because there was no longer a wetland next to that. And I don't know, it's snowballing, and things seem very, very, very strange to me. So, you know, and they have this nebulous Act 250 permit that nobody can evaluate. They talked about, oh, the bats aren't a problem because we're gonna build when there aren't any bats here. It's like, wait a minute, you're taking away the habitat
You're not giving us the data, you're just saying the bats are gonna be fine because we're gonna build when they're not looking. That's what the consultant said during the Act 250 thing on Friday. And so I would just like a little clearer picture, and I think I'm probably not the only one. I'm kind of dovetailing with what Andy said about we're you know, kind of just chasing shadows here. We don't have a clear picture of who's coming, of what's coming, of whether or not there's an actual need. The target keeps changing, and yet we're expected to do all the due diligence, and I would like a little help with that. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do. I will tell you that things like the bats, we've dealt with those with other construction projects. I don't know what the consultant said, but the ones who will have the end statement on that is not the consultant, and it's not even the people sitting there in the Act 250 Commission. It's our state agencies that do that as a full-time. They have scientists, and they do that as a full-time living, and all of those state agencies will have an opportunity to input into it. And just because it's a state project doesn't mean that they all are of a group thing. So I mean, you have an opportunity to input, not just to the, you know, if you're concerned, say with the bats, you have an opportunity to make sure that the state agency that's looking at that is well aware that there's bats there, and you have data showing that, because they'll have to look at that.
It's not just the bats, it's what I'm seeing is so little evidence of good faith here. We had the consultant tell us to our face, oh, we're gonna build the road in the wintertime when the bats aren't here. And to me, that's a slap in the face to anybody who cares about the environment. We're just gonna go around the rules, is basically what he told us.
That's not what, they do it during the winter because the bats are not there and they're not breeding, and that's why we did things like with the bridge.
But you're still gonna destroy the habitat.
Well, they have to, I don't know how much is there for habitat, but I mean, that's, so I think I've got your point. Is there something else, Louise? It's 10 after 10.
No, that's just an example of it. My concern really is about the process, about the lack of transparency across the board. We've got, you know, Act 250 permits that kind of build on spraying permits that kind of build on master plan, and none of the dots connect. There is, it's almost like there's a shadow master plan that somebody knows about that they're not telling any of us. Like, okay, who's gonna build the hangars? What are the buildings? What are the businesses that are coming or not? We can't evaluate any of it.
Okay.
I mean, Andy was absolutely right. We're chasing shadows here because but by the time a builder wants to come and actually build something, well, the permit's already there. We got the pre-approval, so the permit's already there. And so we will have missed our chance to evaluate what we couldn't evaluate because we didn't have the information to do it. And so, you know, I've asked lots of questions and I have gotten 0 answers. You know, I've gotten kind of some strange rambling responses. But, you know, if I ask a yes or no question, I get rambling and I get not information that I can use. I asked about the validity of a permit that was issued when abutting landowners weren't notified, and I got a very long response from V-Trans explaining how it all happened. And yet here we are 8 months later and I'm still not getting notices. And that's just one of my concerns. It's a question of process, it's a question of transparency, and I'm not seeing any of that here.
Just out of curiosity, did you know about it?
I found out about it secondhand, but late enough that I didn't have any time to review the material, so when there were questions to be asked at the hearing on Friday, I wasn't in a position to really ask the questions that I would like to ask, and they did not. They recessed the hearing, they did not adjourn it. because I think there were too many open questions.
And so they will have a second hearing?
Theoretically, but I don't know and I asked to be included on that, but whether I will be notified or not, I do not know.
Okay. Is there anything else? Because we still have other agenda items
No,
tonight?
it's late, and I'm sorry to keep you this long, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't look like a fool because my microphone wouldn't work, so.
I thought you'd gone to
So
sleep.
I thank you for your time, and I really appreciate that the conversation has opened up so much, because it really needs to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.
Thank you.
There's another hand up.
Judy Weiger Groves had her hand up and she has put it down.
Okay.
She just texted me, she does want to.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
There's nothing new.
Okay.
Please say you can hear me.
Yeah,
We can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, Jason, I apologize for keeping you, and maybe I can add a little levity to the situation because I know it's late. Maybe I should say bats are like my favorite animal. Bats are my favorite animal. No, that didn't help. Okay.
We all love bats because we're tired of mosquitoes, Judy. So can we are, levity's not really the time at 10:15 when we still have agenda items. What do we got?
Sorry. So, my concerns are the availability of data that the state is presenting as far as the permitting process. I have asked for a ratio of gray to green infrastructure that will take place as a result of future development. I have not yet heard. That was the 7th of August. I have asked for references for specific slides in the airport aftermath, airport master plan update as of 7th August. Specifically, the number of new aircraft and the number of new operations. Have not heard back. I have asked about bat monitoring. Bat monitoring, bat corridor mitigation and monitoring to clear selected cutting for Indiana bats and northern long-eared bats. Come the 4th of April, 2016, have not yet heard back.
Judy, did you enter those concerns in the Act 250?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Did you enter those concerns in the Act 250?
I have sent them to Michelle Boomhauer at V-Trans.
I'll give you another
I
email
don't know what
to
else
send
to
it.
do, Brian.
I'll give you another email to send it to.
Back.
'Cause that's the transportation, but the Act 250 will have stuff that will go over to natural resources.
And I will do that, but maybe as a parting note. As of June 2017, V-Trans defines a forest canopy as all above ground woody, leafy vegetation. That's not what a forest canopy is. V-Trans, we are getting no information from them. We are getting no data from them. We are getting no, that's not the definition of a forest canopy. I mean, you can look it up. That's not the definition of a forest canopy. Yet they are using that to determine clear cutting or cutting around the airport. That is not acceptable. And I believe
Can I ask a question,
the
Judy?
board needs to make a statement about that.
Are you talking about the past cutting, or are they asking for new cuttings?
No, future cutting.
Are you talking about in the master plan, or are we talking about they've submitted a request for future cuttings?
So, in the past cutting, they have not supplied true information, and they have clear cutted the area behind, north of the airport, and I can send you those resources. And now they are proposing additional cutting of about 0.2 acres near the airport to accommodate roadways and parking. And they're saying without, they're saying there are no bats there. And there is no data for that. They're going to cut that area and provide no information for demolishing bat habitat. And what they were saying is, well, if we do cut down their habitat, they'll find somewhere else. To which I said, okay, you guys go on a 1 month, 6 month vacation to somewhere else. And then you come home and you find that your home is not there.
So
Somebody demolished it.
I've got the concern. We're going to move on, Judy, because it's so late, but I'd like to talk to you
I know
offline.
it's late, Brian. I know it's late.
I know, but Judy,
Somebody has got to address this.
I'm just telling you, if you could just listen for a second. If you and I could talk offline, I would walk you through how that process works and where you put the input to. If you have proof that there's bats there, then that needs to be a part of the Act 250 process.
And I'm saying, Brian, the state of Vermont has to prove that there's no bat, actually.
Well,
There's no bat
there will be a survey done,
there.
and it's not by the Department of Transportation. So,
And I know and I can provide evidence for that. Nobody does a random walkthrough an area and says, there are no bats here. That's not how an accurate bat survey is done.
Okay, well, but
And that's what the state did.
this is
Sorry,
going nowhere, though.
I love them.
I get it.
I'll leave this off. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Judy.
Good night now.
Bless you.
Howard.
You still awake? Barely, yeah.
Howard, in my defense, I did tell you to come late.
So,
10 o'clock.
I know you've got some additional thoughts. Did you look at the draft letter from the board?
No, I didn't
It's
see
in the packet.
I did not see that.
Okay, let me read it. I'll read it to you here. Offer of assistance from Middlebury Energy Committee. Dear Zeke, we write with regard to Summit Properties planned residential development on Seminary Street Extension and to relay an offer of assistance from our Energy Committee. If desired by Summit Properties, the Middlebury Energy Committee is available to provide information and expertise to Summit on greenhousing design, including high-efficiency construction principles and low or zero carbon infrastructure during the early design phases of the project. The Energy Committee members have growing levels of expertise in these areas and access to professional architects and builders who have direct experience they are willing to share. Thank you for your consideration of the Energy Committee's offer of information and advice for this important project. Is that acceptable?
Sounds great.
I've talked to Zeke, and he'd be willing to chat with you. We'd send him this letter, and then you guys could link up.
Absolutely. And just as, let you know that we are fully supportive and respect the need for affordable housing here, so.
Okay.
And we certainly would never do anything to jeopardize that. But no, I appreciate that, yeah.
Okay.
So there's also 10A, I guess, the CPG, is that? So, no, so we're done with that?
Well, we gotta finish that. The
Okay,
board,
all right,
any questions or thoughts from the board on that? I did reach out to them and said that our Energy Committee would like to work with them. Are you guys willing to meet with them and chat, and would you use them for some stuff? And Zeke said he would be interested in meeting with Howard and talking about how they might work together. So.
Thanks, Brian.
So I need a motion.
We should move now.
Can I get a motion?
Yep. I move to sign the letter to Zeke Davison of Summit Properties conveying the Energy Committee's offer of information and assistance in incorporating green housing and high-efficiency construction principles into the planning of Summit's Seminary Street Extension housing project.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Now, if you could lead us through, Howard, the request from the Energy Committee to allow Vermont Solar Fund LLC to file a certificate of public good?
Yeah, so Ian Fair from Vermont Solar Fund came and spoke with us about their business model. They offered to submit an application for a CPG for the town office building for solar on the south-facing, well, actually, the two south-facing roofs, and also the canopy at the Amtrak station.
Which is not owned by the town.
It's not owned by the town. I'm not getting much response from V-Trans or whoever the state whoever it is from the state that I have been emailing. I think they would be agreeable, provided that any solar we put on the Amtrak canopy covers the cost of the electricity that they have to pay, which I assume is just the light bulbs and whatever, it's minimal. So it should be in a noise in terms of what would be generated there. I think it was 52 panels is what what was proposed. Fairly significant, and probably a quarter of one panel would cover all their electricity needs. So it's, but the idea right now is just to get the CPG because the rates change on September 1st, and that's why we are bringing it into this meeting to try so we can get approval to get the CPG application in place, because then it goes up 1 penny. The net metering, the credit that you get, the benefit you get actually is 1 penny less starting September 1st, which translates, that's about 6.4% less return you get on these arrays.
And that's a lifetime?
It's locked in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you get that paper in by September 1, we are eligible for that rate?
Well, it's not lifetime. The clock starts ticking, so the project has to be completed within so much time after that.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure what that time is.
Yeah.
But
the rates are locked in if you sign up.
But the rates are locked in, right?
I think you're talking years, though, it's not months.
It's years. It's maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
Good.
And the other thing is, the town would not be obligated to go with some Vermont Solar Fund. So once you have the CPG, it could go out to bid, any provider, installer could bid against that, and you go with the best option. The nice thing about Vermont Solar Fund is that they can do that without any upfront costs. So it's not like you have to float a bond or anything like that, which is, it's nice, and you use the savings to pay off the cost, at which time, once it's paid off, then then you get the full benefit of the solar.
So really what they're asking for us tonight is, would we support getting a CPG, and at a later time, they would come and pitch a project, and we would have to look at it and see and figure out how we want to do it. But it's asking for our approval to get a CPG that makes it more affordable to do that project, because you're getting paid a little bit better. So, thoughts of the board on that?
And there's no obligation, once you have the CPG, you don't have to even install.
Well, you can let it expire, and then you have to just reapply.
Right.
Yeah, why wouldn't we do this?
I understand what's going on. I think it's fine.
So Ian Fair will submit for the CPG, but we are not obligated to use them for the actual building
Yeah,
of the solar.
which is
Amazing, thank you.
very nice of him
Yeah.
to do that.
That's lovely.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I move to authorize Ian Fair of Vermont Solar Fund LLC to file applications for a certificate of public good for 2 potential town solar projects, with the understanding that such filings will not bind the town to any specific future action.
Any questions on that? Are we able to do that on the platform where it's a state platform, Kathleen?
There's going to be some maintenance agreement on that.
Okay.
So I think the thought is.
Build it into that.
Yes.
Okay, add that in.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, and I applaud your patience.
Next is adoption of policy prohibiting the practice of texting while driving in compliance with Executive Order 13513. So a 2021 update to Vermont Community Development Program's municipal policies and codes includes a new requirement that any municipality applying for a VCDP grant funding must attest that it has adopted written policies that, number 1, prohibit employees from texting while driving, and number 2, require employee compliance with 23 VSA Section 1095B, which prohibits the use of handheld portable electronic devices while operating a motor vehicle. We have 2 draft policies that were in our thing, one for each of those, and they were in the packet. Hopefully you read them, and we need to adopt both policies before we can re-adopt the VCDP municipal policies and codes. With that, if you've read them, I would look for a motion on each of those. They're very reasonable, and they're surprising that we don't have a policy on that.
It's against the state law.
already.
It's against
That's
the
right.
law.
It's against the
right.
law.
Oh, we don't need,
Now it's extra,
but we have to have a
it's the law.
policy.
But we have to
They
have a policy too.
Yeah.
Brian,
So,
I move to adopt the select board policy on texting while operating a municipal vehicle.
In
Second.
compliance with state law.
All in favor?
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Yes. Oh, I didn't vote. Aye.
I said aye already.
I know, but the next one go.
Oh, then, no, you can do the same.
All right. I move to adopt the select board policy on using handheld electronic devices while operating a municipal vehicle.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is our readoption of the VCDP as needed for the Lindale Mobile Home Park Septic System Upgrade Projects and other upcoming grant applications to their program. So at our November 27th, 2018 Select Board meeting, the board adopted the Vermont Community Development Program's municipal policies and codes as a condition of the grant award received for the Lindale Mobile Home Park Septic System Planning Project. On July 26th, update to Kathleen Ramsey, Isaac Wagner of Wagner Development Partners, a consulting firm working with the Addison County Community Trust on the Lindale project, reported that a mobile home ARPA construction funding request totaling $900,000 is being submitted to the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, setting the stage for potentially putting the project out for bid in September. Among the items that Isaac is seeking from the town in preparation for moving to the construction phase, Isaac is requesting that the board adopt an updated municipal policies and codes document which reflects additions and revisions that VCDP has made since the board's 2018 approval. Any questions? Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to adopt the Vermont Community Development Program's updated municipal policies and codes for the Lindale Mobile Home Park Septic System Upgrade Project.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Check warrants, Andy.
Yeah, I did review all of the checks, warrants, whatnots. Apparently, part of this is the payment of property tax to the Department of Education.
Big one.
A third of that. So anyway, I move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $5,891,988.44, consisting of $5,745,920.75 for accounts payable and $146,067.69 for payroll for the period of August 10, 2022 through August 23rd of year of our Lord, 2022.
You got the big one.
Do we have a second?
Big one.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board member concerns, Andy.
I'm concerned that it's late.
Yeah. Farhad,
My concern is I'm tired, I want to go home.
we still have a executive session. Dan?
Can we get a public health and safety meeting scheduled?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on that committee too, so.
Okay, well then, you heard
Yeah.
one thing that would be nice to address
Yes.
on that.
Absolutely.
That one.
So-
And a bunch of others.
Esther? Yeah, there were a couple of pieces.
Yeah.
I have a few words for everyone. Mommy, when are we going home? I was stunned by the question posed by my 4-year-old son. His words pierced through me as I was unable to answer the question. How do I tell him we do not have a home yet? How am I to be honest about where we are and not share the burden of my concerns? How do I frame it for my children? A friend advised me to tell the children that this is an adventure. After hearing that framing, the pieces came together for me. I won't let them know. We'll be home soon. For now, we are on an adventure. The following day, I sat down with my children and told them that these next few weeks we're going on an adventure. We're going to stay with different people, and our last stop would be at Auntie Neffy's house before we make it to our new home. Yay, Mommy, I can't wait. When are we going to Auntie Neffy's house? I am one who suffers in silence, one who does not easily ask for help, one who exhausts every option on my own. With my housing crisis, that mindset was not an option. I went from secure housing for a year to needing to evacuate in 10 days. From knowing everything was going to be all right to putting one foot in front of the other. During that time, I leaned into my community, our community, the Middlebury community, and I was met with love, grace, and temporary housing. I read that part because I am now, I was not able to find housing in Middlebury. I am moving out. This is my last select board meeting, and it makes me so sad. I'll be moving next month. My family has secured housing. I was gonna buy a house, but like so many others have experienced, I can't afford it. I had someone who I was working with, but it fell through, and she wanted more money, and I am not in the place in my life where I have more money. I'm still I'm still making roots. I don't have an inheritance. My parents are immigrants. They're trying to survive themselves. So I say all that to say I'm really grateful for where we're going with the zoning laws. I'm happy to hear that we're gonna make affordable housing, and I know it's for the future. Unfortunately, I won't be a part of that. And I wanted to say a personal thank you to all of you. During my time here, I have grown so much. I love Middlebury, and Middlebury will always be a part of my heart. But unfortunately, it's not a place where I can stay with my family. So, thank you all, and I love you.
Sorry to hear
I
that.
told you were gonna make me cry, and
So sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry that, yeah, that there's not some.
It's just the helplessness.
I know.
So hopeful that that was gonna work out.
I was too, but it's been 8 weeks of us being homeless and relying on family and friends, and I'm tired.
Sure.
I lived there for 16, 17 years. Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just take 5 minutes. I don't want to take too much of people's time, but, you know, to say that your story is one I've heard over and over again, and for every family that has their rental home sold out from under them, there are kids who have to switch schools, there is stress on the family unit, you know. I'm also glad that we did pass the zoning. I think it'll go a long way, but it's not going to help the families that we have now. And I do think, you know, I think it's kind of poignant in a way that we were talking specifically about the Washington Street Extension house, because that went from a building that was housing multiple families and a daycare, which are two of the things that we need the most. And now it's, you know, for better or for worse, being rented out by students who, in reality, have guaranteed housing in town. If they're, you know, if they're students at the college, there is housing for them. It may not be what they want, but, you know. So anyway, that doesn't sum up anything tidily, but I think it's interesting that we had all those things in here with us tonight. And, you know, I'm hopeful that we'll continue working to make our community more affordable for working families. And I don't know if we've had renters on the board before, but I imagine it's not often. And let me just say for the record that 40% of our town is renters. You know, 40% of people in Middlebury rent. And by losing your voice, in some ways, they may also feel like they're losing their voice.
A lot of them are low-income people also, they can't afford.
Right, and I think as a board, and as community leaders, we have to really think about what we're doing to ensure that a variety of voices are heard on our boards, on our committees. Obviously, there's no workaround for this particular situation, because it is what it is, but, you know, I just want to make sure we're keeping that conversation present in our minds as we're making decisions. So that's it for me. And I would also like to go home.
Okay, well, it just highlights to me, it's very sad that, but it highlights the struggle. I mean, Jason's family, we all know people that are in that situation. It just highlights why it's important that we make that and the childcare, and the one on Washington Street Extension became something different because that childcare went out of business. They couldn't staff it anymore. The person wanted to retire, and so, you know, we have to have more of a corporate level childcare, not dependent upon transition of a family business. So, because it's so critical to our community. So there may be some issues with it, but we have to be able to go beyond those issues because it's that critical to our community. So I'm happy to see it moving forward. maybe get you back once we have some housing.
Yeah.
We do have need for a brief executive session. Somebody want to lead us into executive session?
Do
Can
I
you-
have it?
can you do it?
Yep, I've got it. In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of personnel matters and contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its negotiating strategy if it discusses the personnel matters and contracts in public.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters and contracts under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. 10:45, we're going